Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Pylon Show. We are going strong at episode number 99. Almost
Whoa.
there. Wow, that's a lot of episodes. Almost time to cancel the show, I think. This is going to be a fun episode. We have three wonderful guests here, two of which are new, and one of which is on like every third episode or so. Nathanias, how you doing, buddy?
Hi, I'm Nathan. I play StarCraft. I'm a gamer. I'm doing great, Dan. It's great to be back on. It's great to be here talking to some other people that I don't normally talk to on this show. So that's nice too.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for coming. There's a theme here today, guys. We'll talk about that in just a moment. I'm sure people are trying to put it together right now. They're like, what do these three have in common? But Kaelaris, I finally have you on the show after a million billion years. You know, I can't believe it took 99 episodes when we've worked together like 99 times already.
Yeah, I can't believe it either, Dan.
I know. Every time I get it, like it's almost like I'm collecting Pokemon cards or something, and I want to have like every person that has ever been important in StarCraft on the show at some point. So every time I get someone new on, I feel accomplished, but I also feel guilty.
99 episodes, Dan. 99! And you
Yeah.
didn't ask. No, I mean, I've been asked before, but I was busy. But yeah, it's nice to be here.
Well, thank you for being up in the middle of the night. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's like, 3 a.m.? But I'm happy to be here. Like, it's not like, I fizzle away and I don't exist. And when it comes to StarCraft, I'm still watching every Pylon Show episode, and the ridiculous amount of StarCraft going on right now, which is literally impossible, but I try.
I know. It's crazy. And then another new guest here. Kudos to those of you who remember this guy from back in the day, still around in esports, going strong. Axeltoss, how are you doing? Thank you for joining us.
Hey, man. I'm great. Thanks for having me. Really cool to hang out with you and Nathanias and Kaelaris. You guys are my homies. So obviously a lot of events are not happening as much, so we can't hang out as much. So it's cool to be able to hop on and chat. And hello to everyone watching. People might know me from Rocket League more so than StarCraft. I hosted the RLCS for the first 6 seasons, and the Rocket League Esports, they're doing pretty good things. It's a growing esport. And I've done some work on some other games as well, but I still try to follow StarCraft as closely as I can. Artosis and Tasteless are still my favorite. And yeah, that's all I got.
I paid him to say that, literally.
He did.
All right.
Hashtag ad. You have to say hashtag ad. The government's coming for you.
Yeah. All right.
No, it's true.
All right. Thanks for coming on, man. All right. Let's go through the sponsors real quick, and then we will talk about what the kind of subject is that we're talking about here today. First, as a roadmap, we are going to move This Week in StarCraft to the end. Anytime we have a European guest on, we do the show, and then I'll do the This Week in StarCraft at the end.
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Allow people to go. And Nathanias has been up since like 4 a.m. for the draft.
I got him pretty early for the draft.
Yeah. So me and Axeltoss the only ones well rested, I guess, at this point. All right. So let's get through this. The pylonshow.com. This is where you can go for all of your Pylon Show needs. If you need the show notes, if you need a VOD, if you need to know when the next one is, if you need to drop off a Patreon question, if you need to download or follow on social media, it's a great place to do all that. thepylonshow.com. Also, you can check out our link tree, linktr.ee/The Pylon Show. This has links to everything that you need, wherever you want to download and everything. It's kind of like thepylonshow.com, but in one simple and not as pretty page. We also have our Matcherino, matcherino.com/ you guessed it, The Pylon Show. You can go there and type in a code for free. Just sign in and type in the code. I believe it's tapioca this week. Tapioca. It must be National Tapioca something or other this week. So type in tapioca and it prints free money for us. It's amazing. Also, if you want something wonderful like this Pylon Show mug, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Oh my God.
Can you send me a mug?
I want that.
I want a mug.
I'm going to go buy that. I'm going to go buy it.
We'll ship one out after the show to you.
There you go.
No.
It would be better if the
we got you guys. No problem
around it.
Wow.
No other pylons,
I think you guys are the first ones smart enough to ask.
Hey, I asked for all the free things. I'm going to be honest with you.
Ask for? It's a clause in my contract everywhere. So.
Yeah. But check it out, guys. If you want to have these cool mugs and everything and sweaters, whatever, check it out. Matcherino.com/The Pylon Show. And again, the code this week is tapioca. Type it in. And then, of course, our Patreon, patreon.com/The Pylon Show. This is really the meat and potatoes of the show, how we keep the show running. And this is the greatest way to support. Thank you to everyone who has supported us over our long history of 99 episodes so far. Still going strong into the future. So definitely check that out. And of course, as always, a big thanks to our $100 tier supporters, Shane, Jerry Wang, VDEC, Astrofin, Manard, and Blinker. Okay. So that is that as far as our sponsorships and everything go. So why do we have this episode that has Nathanias, Kaelaris, and Axeltoss on it? That's kind of what possibly could the topic be? Well, actually, this is going to be one where we're kind of talking about what makes a good show within StarCraft 2 esports and what we can learn from other esports as well, because all three of these guests have done a ton of different titles over the years. And I think bring a unique perspective because they all kind of started in StarCraft and have spread out and done some other things. So I think that that's an important thing, especially as it feels like once upon a time, everyone watched all the esports and now every scene has too much and it's harder to keep up.
That's
So
true.
I feel like the people that are keeping up are the people that do multiple titles. So yeah, I don't know. So that's kind of the joining theme of this show. So I'd love to start out by just kind of asking you guys to list a few of the titles or however many titles you want that you have worked on, just to give kind of an idea of the perspective that you're bringing to the show. Nathanias, what are some of the titles that you have worked various shows and stuff on?
Okay, I've done a good amount of like the more casual stuff with Twitch Rivals. I think I did like something like 10 shows for them last year. I did the first offline major event for Apex Legends last year that they did in Poland, and I've been doing stuff like a lot of battle royale stuff at PAX events for the last couple of years, running like their stage booths for Gigabyte and whatnot, where like they have people come out and do stuff. So I'm doing a bit of the live event stuff, studio stuff. I've cast a mobile Fortnite thing that was painful, but you gotta pay the bills,
Hey, man,
right?
you're good.
That
You're
sort of
good,
stuff.
dude.
Can you get me in on that? Sounds
Tell you what,
amazing.
it was a very nice 2-hour job. I won't lie.
All right. Okay. And how about you, Axeltoss? What are some of the titles that you've worked on?
So StarCraft, obviously, or maybe not obviously, if people don't remember or don't know.
No, you're an old StarCraft guy.
Yeah, so some quick StarCraft events BlizzCon in China. I think Artosis, you were there too.
Yeah.
That was like 2014, long time ago.
Yeah, that was the year that they skipped BlizzCon. That was 2012, I think.
Yeah,
actually, the World Finals in China. What was it even? BWC, I think we called it back then.
BWC, yeah. We're passing one, right?
Yeah, that was actually a really fun event. I really enjoyed that.
It was great. I was involved with MLG, Major League Gaming, with Axlav. Worked in New York City on that. Really cool times. Otherwise, a lot of different StarCraft stuff. And then other games, the Rocket League Championship Series. I was able to get in from the start, which is pretty cool. Like Rocket League came out, and I was like, okay, I was playing StarCraft, but I was also looking at other games. Rocket League came out, and like, I'm into that. It's cool. High skill ceiling. It's difficult. Let's go. It's gonna be a good esports. So I was able to get involved with that. Worked on the first 6 seasons of that as the host. I've done some Apex Legends. I've done some Halo. I hosted the Halo World Championships. I've just done a lot of different hosting. Might be more dynamic in the games that you can really do, because you're really leveraging a lot on your analysts and some specific experts. So I've taken a lot of hosting roles on a lot of different games. As far as commentary, I haven't done as much but I still love StarCraft, and I would do StarCraft again. And then I'm doing some Apex Legends in-game commentary. You guys know, just the fast pace, the real time commentary. There's really nothing like it, and it's at the core of why we do what we do. So, but it's important to find games that you can really appreciate that and do what you want with it. So,
absolutely. And Kaelaris, how about you? What are some of the titles that you've worked on?
Strap in because it's time.
Yeah,
I made a list. No, I didn't make a
sure.
list.
Let's do it.
So, okay. So obviously we did StarCraft, and I mean, I continue to do StarCraft. I really wanted to do the DreamHack stuff, right? But it just didn't work out schedule-wise, so that's a bit of a shame. I love being involved in StarCraft. It's still the best esport. And then after StarCraft stuff, I mean, I actually said it on the Tasteless podcast a while back. Like, there was multiple reasons why I like branched out from StarCraft. One is because I'm just an all-around gamer, but the second one was also because I wanted to step out of the shadow of the people at the top. um, so like I started doing Heroes of the Storm because I enjoyed Heroes of the Storm. It was a lot of fun. We did everything there, very top and stuff like that. That was cool. And that's where I ended up getting into hosting, right? 'Cause initially, I was doing it as a commentator.
Mm.
And to this day, I still don't like the host role as much as commentating. I think maybe Axeltoss feels that way. Maybe Nathanias feels that way as well. But there's just like there's so much energy you can exude in commentary compared to like hosting. Hosting's kind of like the janitorial role, in my opinion, but pays pretty well. So. And then moving on from that, I did some Guild Wars 2 stuff because I kind of helped out that scene a little bit when ESL started taking on some projects with that. I'll try and TLDR this as fast as possible because there's a few.
No problem.
And then obviously I've been a World of Warcraft player for a long time. So I was like, well, I gotta know the guys at Blizzard. So I was like, well, maybe I could do the MDI, the Mythic Dungeon Invitational stuff, which was the speed running thing where like people are racing against each other in 5-man dungeons, and that was really cool. So I got to do that. I got to do their World Championships effectively. And I guess a lot of what I'm doing right now, aside from the Clash Royale thing that I did a little bit of as well, I guess what mostly I'm doing is like PUBG and PUBG Mobile. I've done almost every single one of their World Championships across the board in both platforms. And that's been a lot of fun. That has been a lot of fun for sure. Like those have definitely been the biggest stages I've been put on because apparently PUBG Corp and places like Tencent and what like that have a lot of money. A lot of money. So yeah, those have been fun to do. Yeah, I think that's about it. I'll stick with that. We'll stick with those. There's been smaller projects, but they're not really. I'm not saying they're not worth mentioning. It's just kind of like one-offs here and there and stuff. So it's
Yeah. And as for me, I mean, I've done StarCraft 1, 2, Heroes of the Storm, Hearthstone, and World of Tanks all in a serious way, and then a ton of smaller stuff. I've done some commentary for it feels like almost every esport at this point, even if it's only like a 1 or 2 day type gig. So yeah, that's a really diverse lineup of games that we kind of have here to kind of compare, I guess, to what we're doing within StarCraft. I did like what you said about because all three of you have done a lot of hosting roles, and even I've done a little bit of hosting roles. And I definitely agree. Like commentating is, in my opinion, way more fun, and hosting takes way more work, man. Like you gotta be on top of everything. The janitorial role or whatever. I would say that feels about right, right?
Yeah.
That's like when I've had to do the desk, it's like you got to keep everyone in line. You actually have to really pay attention during rehearsals and know all the transitions and know who to ask about what and the timing of everything. It's a pain in the butt.
Especially when because obviously here in Europe we have ESL, DreamHack, Star Ladder, all of these places and stuff like that, and they all work on different show flows, right? So by janitorial work, I will say that you're keeping everybody in line. You're doing the busy work of like, this is why we're going here, and this is why we're going here, and also you're making it look like everything's not on fire in the back because a lot of times things are on fire in the back. And you're there to make sure it doesn't look that way. So yeah, that's what we do.
It's like I almost feel like commentary. Like if you're a commentator, you put your work in beforehand because you like know the game, and then it's nothing from there on, right? It's like you watch games and stuff because you like the game, and like you study it because you like it, but like you show up to an event as a commentator and you're like, yeah, I'm here to commentate. All right, cool. And then the host shows up and is like, okay, let's do it.
It's time to go through the same arguments I've had with everybody in every tournament for the last time. It's like, well, can I have a program monitor over there, please, over by the cameras? They're like, why do you need that? I'm like, geez, Louise. Okay.
Oh man, that's the
see
best.
the program.
That's the best. We need, I need to be able to see what's happening on the actual stream itself, not just in game.
Whilst in camera shot, like whilst in the eye shot of my camera, so it doesn't look like I'm looking away from my camera, like. But they don't. And then they provide you a piddly little monitor where I can't read anything. That's why I'm wearing glasses, by the way. Like, that's why I got glasses, because one time ESL gave me this like 12-inch monitor next to my camera, and I'm like, I cannot read a damn thing that's on that. But okay, I'll get glasses.
I would say also the hours can be pretty long, and I mean, and the thing is with Nick and Dan, you guys are kind of hosts and commentators with what you're doing. So it's like that's almost something that's also very difficult. And for me, like having done both commentary and hosting can be really long days, and you have to like manage your psyche in a way where it's like you're on, like where when you're on camera, it's not like that's how you are all the time, right? There's a certain energy that goes into that, and it's important to hold on to that and to maintain that. And that can be have a lot of fatigue can come with that. So if you're having really long days, that's probably one of the more difficult things as a host, I would say. But yeah, I agree with what you guys are saying. At the same time, though, I find it can be so fun. It can be so great because like you're there, man. It's kind of your show, and you can kind of do what you want with it in a way. And you have your friends around you, so you're kind of chatting with your friends. And another thing is like bringing esports to the mainstream. There's an importance there as a commentator and as a host to set a bar or to do that job properly. And I think it's fulfilling to pursue that. And that's really what I go for. So yeah, I think it can be really difficult, but really fun. And I'm probably very torn on which I prefer, to be honest. But let me tell you, dude, if you're hosting a show and you're in front of a stadium of hundreds of thousands of people or tens of thousands or whatever it is, like that's got to be one of the coolest things. Like I haven't done it, or like maybe hosting a show on at E3 or something like that, where it's like something really important and cool. Like I haven't done something like that, but that's got to be one of the coolest things. So yeah.
So would you say, because you've kind of you were a commentator and you grew into the host role, would you say you're kind of protective of the role now? I'm curious if you feel kind of the same way as I do.
What do you mean protective?
So like I got into the host role, and then I suddenly I was like, okay, I still enjoy the commentary role more than the host role, but I kind of feel like I can make the show flow the way it should flow, or I want it to flow, to the point where like there's been times where people have said to me, do you want to be on analysis desk? And I'm like, I would maybe enjoy that a little bit more, but I know that I can make the show flow the way it should flow. Maybe, and that's a hard way to describe it, I suppose. What do you think?
Yeah, I feel like I'm very thankful I have the perspective from both. I think it's very helpful for a host who has been a commentator, because they can know those situations when you're throwing or when you're receiving it back. And I feel like in any game, if you're hosting and you have a good commentator background, regardless of what it is, it's only going to help you as a host overall. Because maybe there's a language there, I guess, between the commentators. You're able to understand what they're saying, and you're able to, I guess, the show just is better overall. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers the questions, but just a few thoughts on that.
This is kind of like what you guys are talking about is like already a perfect segue into what we're going for, which is like what actually makes a show good, right? Like looking at StarCraft 2 and then kind of looking at other games and what we can pull into that. Because yeah, I think like I guess it feels like there's levels in shows, right? Like for instance, GSL is like it's good, it's high production, it's a great show, I think, but like we don't have a host, right? And then once you level up into something like a GSL versus the World, suddenly, oh, now we have a desk, and extra commentators. And then it's like, okay, if you level up from there now we're at a WCS stop, and now we have an official desk host, an analysis desk, and then a commentator desk. And then and it keeps on kind of leveling up like that. I just kind of want to get from you guys, what do you think are like the important aspects to make like a very quality esports broadcast?
Nate? Yeah,
I mean there's a whole
it's a very broad question,
that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when I think about like what you need tools to succeed wise, if I was going to start with things that I noticed that like sometimes like you do a tough gig that they don't really have, or like there are pieces missing, it's stuff like a program monitor at least when I think about from my perspective as the guy
Sure.
working on the show, not necessarily the viewer. Obviously, as the viewer, right, you want graphics, good bit rate on the stream, and you want good audio. But those are always the first two things that I notice whenever I have to go to do something like that. It's like, okay, what do I have to read off of? How exactly, I think consistent branding is an important thing. Like I guess my mind kind of goes back to the whole, at least when we started doing like IEM stuff. I don't know if how long this ended up being forced, but like when I first did it in Intel Extreme Masters, I think they were pretty adamant about you saying Intel Extreme Masters when you say it, and not going back and forth between using the shortened version or using the long version. And I think that if I was going to say just a couple things, that's
Sure.
a few of them.
Yeah. Anything to add to that, James?
I could probably go on about this topic for a few hours.
That's why you're here.
I love it. Though. It's great.
Yeah, doing the host role was like, I mean, the weird thing is that obviously I was working like internally for ESL for like 6 years as well, right? So I kind of saw like what went into that, like especially when we started doing Intel Extreme Masters Katowice, and then they started doing ESL ones as well. All of those big shows, kind of, I saw the formulaic process of how they kind of came together and stuff. As much as it sounds very binary, I guess money and scope really do help. Like when you think of an impressive show or something that's big, for example in StarCraft you do think of your IM Katowices and stuff like that, right? Which is scope is first and foremost. I feel like when it comes to tournament format, grand stage towards the end and stuff like that. Some of the biggest shows that I've been on have not necessarily been for the have been attributed to the quality of the esport or the quality of the talent lineup or the players per se, but it's just the spectacle of it, the spectacle of the show. Even being in a stadium that's been like not full has still provided like an insane level of production value. Like, be it the opening show, people have like I've worked with a lot of Chinese companies that have put on like grand, like, shows at the beginning of things, people coming down on bungee ropes and explosions and all this stuff. And yeah, it's kind of impressive. But I mean, aside from the spectacle of everything, I think that having a good producer really bloody helps as well. One that is actually able to give you good information, or at least, beforehand actually speak and say, okay, this is how I want you to say things. I want you to say as little as possible. I want you to say prize pool next, or just that's it. There's some producers that'll be in your ears saying, all right, we're going to go to the prize pool, and then after that we're going to check out the point distribution, and then we're going to, like, please stop, please. I'm having to listen to 3 conversations at the same time. It just needs to be short.
Yeah, I'll chime in on that. I mean, it's you want to have a good team dynamic overall from the production side to the commentary side. I'm sure that's a goal for any production, is trying to find good synergy between production, between the commentary team, and then between both of those groups to have a really cool show. I think the format and competition has to be compelling. Obviously, there are a lot of specifics you can go into with that, but you know what everyone wants. Just a really cool moment at the end of Sunday or whatever, and the proper format. I mean, that's not necessarily easy to accomplish. But yeah, for me personally, in hosting and mostly as a commentator, one of my goals is to try to help everyone around me look better, and I think you guys would probably agree. Like that's something we try to do. Hopefully we're friends with the people we're working with, and I think we're all fortunate that usually we are. But at the same time, I try to just make everyone look better around me. So I think those dynamics make a show better if the teams can be like that. Yeah,
I got a hard agree on that. That's like, I think a really important aspect is if the whole production team is getting along, and that's on-air talent, of course, and then even the people in the backstage and everything, it really comes through within the show. I definitely realized that.
It's a good way to look at the host role as well, in that you are the enabler, right? Like, I I have oftentimes watched hosts that talk too much, and I'm a very analytical guy when it comes to a lot of the roles in esports. Like when I was commentating and stuff like that, and hopefully I still get to commentate eventually at some point. But I'm watching other people and assimilating information, right? And then when I switched to the host role, I was watching other people and also people in traditional sports and assimilating information. And what I saw a lot of in esports, and even some of the bigger names, by the way, they talk too much, and they kind of sometimes make the show about them, which I don't think is the right way to host. I think, quite honestly, and I challenge myself to do it every so often, like in a every so often in shows, is that a host is being successful when you're A, not as noticed as much, and B, saying as little as possible to then enable the other guys. So I will literally like bring up a point or mask some analysis in a question, and then off the back of that, have the people bouncing between themselves and just say, Nate, and that's it. And then Nate goes off and he's
Mm.
triggered to then talk about exactly what has just happened. And having that, I think, even just like one word in between what people are saying, I think is a whole lot better as the enabler as a host compared to just, you being trying to be the focal point. Don't be the focal point as the host. You're, as I say, janitor work.
Yeah, and shows are different too. Like for Tasteless and Artosis, for example, like their show is different in format, where they're kind of the hosts and the commentators, but at the same time, they have such a connection with the community too, where it's like, dude, it's Tasteless and Artosis. These are your bros who you've been watching for however long, and you guys have jokes that you make all the time that have gone through evolutions throughout the years that you've played, and you better bet there are fans who recognize that and appreciate that. So there's an art to kind of creating that, and I'm sure Dan, you could like really speak on this, where it's like you and Tasteless. I mean, you guys have a synergy. It's like you guys are best friends. You're telling jokes, and that palpitates through the audience. The audience feels that, and they enjoy it, and then you have fans, and then people like it, and more people probably watch. So I think good shows can kind of make that a factor where. Yes, it's about the players, it's about the games, it's about the moment, but there's also some cool personalities here. But at the same time, like Dan, your show it's a little more intimate than maybe some other shows, as you mentioned, with like a desk coming in for shows that you're doing. So just amusing. But I wonder your thoughts on that, Dan, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think GSL is kind of like a different beast in a lot of ways, because it doesn't really require like a desk host, because it's like this regular show. Like, would GSL be better if James moved to Korea and hosted for us? Maybe. We'd have to change the format a bit, but like, does it feel like it needs that? No, it doesn't really feel like it needs that. And I think it has to do with just how many episodes there are when you look at it, right? Like, how many GSL days do we have a year? It's like we have under 100, but over 60. So it's like we have a huge amount. And so it's kind of like, I don't know. It doesn't need to be as epic all the time and things. So it's like a very different feel from most event work, I think. And actually, I mean, you did the Rocket the Rocket League, like what do I call this? Rocket League
Championship Series, RLCS.
Yeah, but the game is Rocket League, right? So it's like Rocket League.
I'm
like
that's
stumbling
proper,
over
dude.
like
that's proper. You're good.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Rocket League. You're like, Artosis, you're stuttering. I'm like, oh, sorry. But like, how did you manage with that, right? Because you did 6 seasons, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 6 seasons. The first season, all online, except the finals would be at a live event. So there were 6 World Championship events all around the world where I was able to host, which is pretty cool. So we had studio shows where I was the host on the desk with 3 other people. We would throw to 2 commentators. So there's 7 people, 7 talent in action at all times, effectively. We're at a studio in Burbank. And then for live events, it would be we went to LA, Las Vegas, London, Amsterdam, Washington, D.C. Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting, right? Because it's like that that was such a regular show, but you actually had a much bigger cast on there. Did that like help it to be,
I
like, do you
mean,
think it was better in that way?
I think I think ideally, almost yeah. I mean, ideally, if you have the budget and the production and the money or whatever, if you can have 6 to 7 buddies there or friends on a show, kind of telling the story, where you have a desk that goes a little bit deeper into analysis, and then you have the commentary team that's hyper focused on just delivering commentary. I mean, Artosis and Tasteless, they're. I mean, I'm sorry, but you guys are so good at doing both, where that's not normal necessarily. I mean, if it's almost much better to have your commentators really focused on the commentary side of it. So that's probably the advantage that having a big team is.
Yeah,
where you really have those guys that are just super focused on the actual art of the commentary in the game, and then you have other guys that are more focused on the pure analysis, and then you have the host or what have you. So I think it adds just different flavors, like maybe compared to maybe a TV show or a sitcom, where how many main characters are there? And esports, you have the players and you have the commentators, so there's a lot of different characters that have stories. So yeah, so maybe I think it probably is better overall, given if you have the budget for it, if it can work.
Can I just chip in here?
Yeah,
Because like
please.
so Rocket League's an interesting phenomenon, and because over the last like 10 years of watching all this stuff, and StarCraft did a league format and stuff like that, and all these other tournaments did a league format. Rocket League, aside from like the tier 1 esports, is the single esport that has prevailed with a league, like, and actually got bigger and better and stronger and everything like that. All these other esports that try and do league format, and all these esports like departments that are like, I know what we'll do a league, like they always try and they always go to die because they don't understand how to put on a league format. Rocket League did. Rocket League, I mean, aside from the fact that they got like a lot of Twitch money at the beginning to be able to fund this and do the studio and stuff like that, which was really cool. And actually it was initially going to go to other games, and then Rocket League came along, and then it was like they worked so well, so hand in hand with one another. It's one of the only modern esports that has just grown and grown and grown and grown from strength to strength. So I have a lot of respect for Rocket League personally.
And it could be a little better too. Something that games haven't really ironed out. And again, forgive me, I'm not super in tune with every game in esport and all of the mechanics they have.
None of us are.
The idea of integrating more of the actual in-game games to go along with the alliteration, where you actually have in-game tournaments that are directly influencing and a part of the esport. Right. Mostly we have the third parties doing it, right? That's kind of mostly how it's been. So Rocket League, that's a pretty simple improvement. That's, if they could figure that out, my goodness, like imagine if they had actual server tournaments in the game that actually brought pro players in the limelight. We talk in StarCraft a lot about how much do the players care about the top of the ladder, and then we have third party organizers put together tournaments for the top of the ladder. What if there was a more developer approach to that, and then it's integrated into the whole esports strategy, blah blah blah, where it it could be more integrated, it could be a lot better. But I think Rocket League has a lot of advantages just with how international soccer is. It's pretty simple to jump into, and very complex, very high skill ceiling. But I think there's arguments that StarCraft is really easy to jump into, but also has a really complex skill ceiling. And that enters the value of the commentator to navigate everyone through all that. So I think Rocket League does have a lot of advantages that have really helped it. And also Rocket League came out at a time to learn from other esports. StarCraft is trial by fire. They're the kind of the first efforts of anyone to kind of do it. And the community was super crazy like about it too. People saying StarCraft's dead, which I've never thought, and I never will think. But Rocket League has the advantages of kind of learning from that too. And now we have a lot of interesting capital coming into play with all the money entering the scene and big companies making plays. So super interesting stuff all around. Sorry to go on tangent there.
Great. Hey, I saw you ready to say something there.
There's a couple of interesting things about this, and I both agree and disagree at points with you guys. And I do feel there is a fine line with, especially all these companies, especially James, you're talking about that try to do the league stuff, and overproducing an event is a very, very easy thing to do when it comes to trying to make these big grandiose things. Like, you don't have to, shoehorn in a desk just so that you can say you had this segment when it's only like 3 or 4 minutes long. And, it's actually a point of criticism for StarCraft that over the years, you at least have more of a reason to take more time on a desk segment to talk about teams between matches when there's a lot of different players or other possible histories, players moving between those teams. But like, it's not unusual for us to have a StarCraft event where 99% of our desk segments, because of scheduling or something like that, having too many matches in one day, are just 2 minutes of cursory thoughts that don't really say a whole lot other than basically like trying to be filler hype. And to go even further on that, I think one of the reasons why the GSL is such a successful show and appreciated show is also the same reason why I think people. There's a big jump of a comparison, but when you tune in to watch like an NFL football game, it's not intro. It's not like some big intro with like this guy standing up on a stage trying to get you hyped, and then a bumper plays, and then it cuts to this. Like, they have on-field reporters that they go to, but for 99% of the broadcast, you're just with the commentators, and they're presented as sitting next to each other with not even behind a desk 99% of the time. They don't do a fancy setup, and it gives you, I think, a lot of that feeling that people talk about in StarCraft, where they're like, oh yeah, I'm staying up in the middle of the night. There's my buddy Nick and Dan. They're right there. They're with me the whole entire time. And outside of, when you go for that interview segment, and there's a lot of pros and cons to having those tools available, like especially for something like a team game. But at the same time as well, like when you're able to feed stats to the commentators and give them information at lightning speed, it makes stuff like doing that a lot better. And yeah, I know there's pregame stuff and whatnot, some guys in the chat bringing up, but like for the most part, if you're watching a game, as long as there's not a big break or halftime happening, like you really are with the same people for the vast majority of it.
Right. Two things off the back of that.
I'll give just quick little examples here. Golf is an interesting one where a lot of people are used at once. Check out the Masters, and it's very interesting, kind of the production angle. Another quick example would be the Olympics. But there's a lot of interesting comparisons here where it might depend on exactly what's going on in the show. But sorry, I just wanted to throw that in there real quick. Go ahead, Kaelaris.
Two things off the back of that. I think that the GSL point that you're bringing up, it's weird because GSL doesn't need anything else, because GSL feels like home to a lot of people when it comes to StarCraft, right? Like if I'm coming to watch StarCraft or whatever, I mean, I've watched GSL since the very beginning, even before, like when I was living in Finland, like living on fucking €5 a month or whatever. Sorry, a week or whatever. And it feels like home, so it doesn't need anything else because it is home for a lot of StarCraft fans, I think. A second thing is that when it comes to desk segments in these tournaments and stuff like that, from a purely production standpoint, from just the back, the desk segment is there so the people at home don't have to watch a 5-minute timer between games. Like, that is why that exists. But thankfully, we have some smart individuals in a lot of our esports that actually can talk about the games and break down more than maybe what has been talked about in the commentary. Not to discredit any of our commentators, especially in StarCraft, because they're the best talent when it comes to esports. And trust me, like, having spoken to all of these other talent rosters and seen how they work and stuff like that, you got people in StarCraft are so lucky to have the talent roster that StarCraft has. That's why those things exist.
It's a really interesting point, though. I totally see what you mean about the countdown timer and why the desk is there for that. But I think there is something to what Nathanias is saying about a slight criticism for StarCraft. I feel like different events will have different quality desk segments. Like if you look at the beginning of Katowice, the desk segments are amazing because you're kind of jumping into other games. You're actually giving a little bit of time.
My favorite.
Those are the best desk segments that we have within StarCraft, at least, right? Is checking out like, oh, look at this game over here. We jump in real quick and just take a look. Be like, yeah, this is what happened to this guy that we didn't get to see the match of. That's very cool. But then there definitely are those other desk segments. Like, look at this past BlizzCon, right? Our desk segments were terrible. It was like just filler.
Yeah, but that's what I mean. At that point, it's bad enough that if you were to cut it out, it would not have had any worse than the breaks people have to deal with anyway that are required by like their contracts.
I mean, do people want to know how mad I was at last BlizzCon? Do people want to know? Like, The best
they're
bit
probably
about
interested now that you said it.
the best bit about that was you'd come to the commentators after our desk segment, and they'd be like, "Yeah, sorry, pre-production, right? The pre-production people to us, they were nice people, but it's not their fault. They were like, we don't have time to do desks. We don't have time to do desks between anything because we've got all these games that we have to go through. And I'm like, okay, that's fair, but why have you wheeled me out here for 5 minutes work? And then so we do our desk segment, and then they're on the commentator. They're like, okay, it's time to go to the commentators, and then we're on the commentators for like 5 minutes before each match. And I'm like,
that's true.
what in the holy are we doing here? Jesus. Yeah, I was mad at that one. That was pretty bad.
Yeah.
Well, I think
That's exactly what I was talking about, by the way. That's exactly what I was talking about.
Well, I think we agree though that if the segment is, if you can design a segment that's nice, that brings in other people, other personalities, maybe a player who's on break or something. If you have something of substance, or what have you, then a desk segment can work. That's kind of what I'm hearing. So I think that's like a producer thing where it's like, okay, who's coming up with these segments and what are you putting there? Because there is a way to make it super fun for everyone involved. So, and I think if you hit that right, then it can add to the show overall. But yeah, it's an overall production question, I think.
If you have tools, to add to it. The thing is that, so I've done leagues where you are sat on a desk between a game for 15 minutes. You've got two guys and you're talking about things, and that's it, which is fine. You can do that. You can have nice breakdowns and stuff like that. But if the tournament organizer doesn't give you like a telestration or some replays to go over, like I have had desks where you get nothing, and I'm just like, guys, nobody's going to watch this league for 80 days if you have nothing and you're doing the same segment for 15 minutes and
just stare at people's faces.
Yeah, mate. Oh my god. Thankfully, the one that I'm currently doing, we have a lot of stuff and it's great. It's diverse, it's different. But what is super important about all of this is that these segments have differences, have changes, which is why I try and make moments or funny little silly things that happen like once per tournament. You guys have seen this at StarCraft things. Like before a final, I'll throw all the papers in the air and they'll go everywhere, and everyone's like, "Oh, that was interesting. That was funny." It's just small moments that make things a bit more interesting throughout things. Because if you don't have those, it's formulaic and boring, and nobody really wants to watch that, especially in the league format. It just gets, it's rubbish. Sorry, I'm angry again.
No.
Throw papers. Throw papers.
It's good fun.
You're basically, you guys are going over exactly what I kind of wanted to hear here, right? There's some criticisms and like how to actually do this correctly to make a good show.
Yeah.
And this stuff is all really great. I wonder if we could get into very similar thoughts to what we're talking about here, but right now we're mostly just on live broadcasts, right? Only literally like GSL is still live. Everything else is like, I guess you get a little bit of studio work, but you don't really get the pro gamers in, right? It's just, there's not a whole lot going on because of coronavirus. So I wonder if there's like if you guys have any like opinions, I guess, on how to make these things work together more. I know, James, you've been doing some of these ones where your casters are like dialing in remote and all that.
So, I mean, I've been doing a lot of studio work, right? Because Smart James moved to Krakow near the Katowice studio in ESL, for our ESL, and I thought, maybe this would be a good idea to be close to this studio, and lo and behold, it is. I didn't move because of this reason. I'm not like, Corona Damas. I didn't predict this pandemic, but no. So we've done a few things. We did the green screen one where I'm on a green screen for PUBG Mobile, and then those guys phoned in, and all the games are played online. And now, because Europe has laxed things a little bit with travel, etc., we actually have, for my PUBG Mobile show at the moment, we have all of the talent fly in, but all the players are still online. So we've got me on a desk with the guys, and then we've got the commentators next to us, and we, throwing back. It looks like a normal broadcast. We just don't have the players there. We have the studio ready to go and everything like that. The studio is beautiful, but they just can't use it yet because PUBG Mobile gave ESL a lot of money. So it's just like, it kind of just feels like an online broadcast, but with the talent there, basically, currently, and it works nicely because everything is online right now. Everything is podcast like, for the tournament. And people are trying to do different things. Like in CSGO, for example, there was a tournament where they kind of put the desk in a virtual space in the maps and stuff like that. Everyone's trying little extra things. But we have, and especially as you say, you over at GSL have the distinct advantage of a few people can be in the same location at the same time, whilst everything else looks like podcasts effectively.
Any other thoughts on doing things online, Nathanias and Axeltoss?
I mean, it's hard. I feel for everyone having to go through and trying to amend things that have been planned out. I think a lot of I mean, it depends on what the show. Like for me personally, in my streams from home, there was always a different feel to it, just like you're streaming here on your Artosis channel, where it's yours, and there's more laid back formats that can work, or more relaxed formats that can work, that can make it feel good for everyone. And you kind of see that.
Actually, no, go ahead.
Well, I mean, you see it sometimes, and if anyone watches network television or whatever, that's kind of changing there too a little bit, where you're getting a shot of someone's cat or something. So there's elements to it where it makes it. There are ways to make it a little bit more relaxing, and yeah, I know why Kaelaris is laughing actually. And then for me on my personal stream, like whenever I stream Dream Hacks, and I casted StarCraft Dream Hacks for like 12 hours at a time, competing with 20 other people for 50 viewers. But it would always be a little bit homey and fun and very interactive with the chat. Like, what's up, Zombie Grub, Shining Laser, you guys in the chat? Like, maybe you interact more with chat or whatever. So there's more of that kind of a feel that productions could take advantage of until we can really get those nice live productions back.
I will say
that's actually, I feel like that's a good point. If I could, real quick, like because everything is kind of online, does epicness need to scale down, right? Can it be as epic if it's all online? Are we still trying to make things like too hype sometimes right now?
I think you always want to try to reach that no matter what. It depends on the tournament. If it's still, you're trying to do, let's say Rocket League, for example, Rocket League has to do their finals online. They're still going to try to do everything they can to make it a world championship event and feel for everyone at home. So I think you still, but that's a world championship production. But so that's different from Olimo League or what have you, maybe some more community-based stuff. So I think the top tier productions still focus on the fireworks and what makes esports incredible, the show, the fireworks and money being won by players. But then other shows can still leverage the more relaxed feel if it's not as much going on.
I will say there's so one thing that has been a very, very cool thing about all of this is that my travel schedule calmed down, which is nice. I've actually been able to be home, because last year it was about 75% of the time. So that's one nice thing, especially doing some of the online shows. They've been super fun, and I've really kind of it's reinvigorated my love for just sitting at home and just doing shows and be like, wait, I can drink my own drinks, I can eat my own food. That's amazing. Because I'm picky.
Sure.
But another thing is that obviously all of these tournaments have their place in the ecosystem, right? You're saying, have we made things too epic? Every component has its place. Like the online show to feed into maybe a final or whatever has its place. But the one thing I miss most about the LAN setting right now, especially with every aspect of it, is the fan interaction side of it, and also the fan ambience side of it, like the crowd ambience side of it. I don't know how much people think about how a crowd impacts a show too much, but if you think about a football match, if anybody's watched the football matches during, I mean, I'm not a football guy, but if anybody's watched football matches during
the
pandemic,
the songs, the chants,
sure.
Oh, I see.
But the ambience right now in it is weird. It's this ghostly feeling almost. But when you're at an esports tournament and you have a mic'd up crowd, the difference is so much. Forget the stage, forget everything like that. If you think back to some of the old MLGs, they barely had a stage, but they had this crowd where you could hear the roar if something happened. You think about the Idra boxer situations and all this stuff, and you can hear the crowd, or when the Kesper players turned up for the first time, and you could hear the crowd, and Jaedong says one word and everyone lights up. That kind of feeling. That's electric. That's chill inducing. That's the thing I miss the most, probably, about the bigger tournaments.
Yeah.
I think they're working on VR, spectating something or other. Maybe that helps.
It's a problem that affects. It's a problem that affects everything too. That's there's a lot of similar issues between the types of problems that we're talking about for esports as well as real sports. And they're like, are they gonna be doing like augmented reality, like digitally placed in fans so that they can still do overhead shots of the stadium? Like, new things are gonna come out of this that we may end up keeping when if and or when things go back to normal, right? So there's a potential for some cool things to be discovered or invented, at least in this time.
But the great thing is that esports has actually, we were so ready for this to a certain degree, right? Like, we know the online space so well. We know how to, create things. And the best part as well is that during all of this is that a lot of the productions that I've worked with, they've pushed the envelope that little bit extra further. Like, the way we can do online shows now with some of these production companies that I've done with, like Starladder, that DreamHack, like the vmix calls that we are able to do, etc., and stuff like that, is so smooth, so good. I mean, even this whereby thing that we're in currently, like, so smooth, so easy to do, because we know this space, whereas some traditional sports had a bit more of a rougher time being able to adapt to this situation, I think.
Yeah, that's certainly true. We shouldn't be, I guess, complaining too much about what's happened. It hasn't affected us like too much, but I think when Axeltoss mentioned the more homey feel, it kind of like struck me as like it's. I always find it harder to make it anywhere near as epic, and I think the crowd is a part of that, probably, where it's like, oh, you hear the crowd roar, and you're like, well, this is just, it doesn't get better. Like, this is what the pro gamers dream about, right? Is winning BlizzCon in front of that type of crowd. Whereas, like, if we have World Championship online, it's like, it is still the World Championship, and you're still the best StarCraft player.
Right.
But does it? You got to
It's not the
feel a
same.
little
It's
sad you don't
not.
have the crowd. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's not the same. And I think as long as you don't pretend to try and make it seem like what you are trying to do is going to make it the same or better, then people will probably just appreciate that you tried. Right? As long as you're
Talent
not.
dreams about it too, right?
Yeah.
Talent dreams about the crowds too. Like, if you think about the tournaments we've done, in the stadium at BlizzCon and stuff like that, and you're there about to start casting. If I was next to Apollo, or if I was next to Day 9, you look behind you and you're like, holy moly, that's a lot of people, and we're about to go out to that. Like, that was truly special.
Yeah. No. Very good points, guys. I'd love to hear from the various things that you guys have worked on. You guys said at the beginning, basically, like, right, StarCraft 2 kind of started the esports boom a little bit. It's like a lot of trial by fire, I think you said, Axeltoss, and a lot of different esports that came out afterwards learned from what StarCraft 2 was doing, and where it failed and where it succeeded in things. But now we have so many esports that have gotten so big at this point, and done great jobs. So I feel like it's time for StarCraft 2 to learn from them some, right? Where it's like, what can we kind of import? What are some great things that have happened in other esports that we should have? And I mean, some of these things have already occurred, like, for instance, the signature series stuff that we've had about the players and everything. Like, I saw those in, like, Dota with the International, right? Those were amazing videos that they were making, and then they kind of made something similar for StarCraft. And I thought that was a great import, right? That, like, we didn't come up with in StarCraft, but was a fantastic addition. I just wonder what are some other things that could be done within StarCraft that other games may have shown us.
Yeah, there's a lot. There's a lot on that one, and that's what's really cool, because a lot of game developers are asking that question amongst themselves, because they're seeing what's going on everywhere. Everyone's trying to figure out, okay, what can we do to take this, to notch this up a little bit more. Yeah, I personally think the more I think the biggest advantages that a lot of games have is community. So the more you can seduce the community, please the community, right? The better your game is going to do normally. More people playing, more people interested, people spending money, wanting to spend more money. You look at the compendium and the international and just the insanity of that. So it's like every game developer is probably trying to do what the compendium has done. That is probably one of the most successful endeavors from a game developer that was new, crowdfunding for this tournament and using it for prize pools. So that's something that a lot of game developers are trying to figure out right now. But I think StarCraft, that's one of the best advantages it might have, is the community and how long StarCraft has been around. I'm going to throw another game at you guys. Artosis, you might know it. It's Kartrider. It's a racing game. It's not as well known. Like everyone thinks Mario Kart, but this game is actually badass. Like it's such a cool game. And it's been around for around about as long as StarCraft. There is a big community for this game, so that's a game that I've been addicted to, and I'm looking out for.
That's cool.
For they're coming out with Kartrider Drift, which is the second generation edition of that game. So StarCraft has a great. RuneScape is another example that has just been around for such a long time, has a huge community. So I think those are the questions that are really being asked there. Is like, okay, how do we really engage these communities? And we're seeing a lot of really clever, like the compendium from Dota, a lot of clever ways of that working. Another quick mention would be the Beyond the Summit tournament series, right? With Hotbit and company, where they or the Take TV Home Story Cup. I hope to go one day. But this like the you have that is a very community oriented endeavor that is wildly successful. So like developers helping that happen more often, but it doesn't come from the developers. It's the community it comes from. So that's probably, I'm talking too much, but that's probably what I think about most, is just those ways of really engaging with the community and making it great for people watching.
Okay. Fair enough. I guess when you talk about the community engagement, and I think of other games, there's like Beyond the Summit and things like that, the compendium. I guess we have the war chest, but it doesn't feel like the compendium as far as I can tell. To me personally, I'm like, it's not. It's cool. I like the war chest. I buy it every time. I unlock everything, but like, it's not exactly the same. I guess a big one was that weird Fortnite stuff that they do. I don't know if we could do something like that in StarCraft, right? Where there's like a black hole and there's 26 million people fucking staring at nothing for 12 hours or something. It's like, whoa, I don't think that can really be, remade, but an interesting idea.
So there are some games that actually have economic systems that are benefiting their players, and that is a tricky cookie to crack, but I'm very intrigued to see what developers are able to make progress with that. And it's hard to get too specific because a lot of games are doing a lot of different things, but just the idea of an element of the in-game economy that might benefit the players actually monetarily, whether it's some sort of crypto item or whether it's, in RuneScape, some of those items are so valuable, like that have been around forever. So there's some of those economic systems I'm really looking out for, because if that can be tied into a tournament rewards infrastructure within a game, it can be tied into prize pools for esports and stuff like that. Could only help attract more players, get players to spend more money, and try to support any esports scene.
Cool.
I'm sort of this is a little bit of a tangent off the actual like esports shows thing, but I mean, I do this. This is what I do.
This is what we do on Pylon Show, anyways. Tangents are good. It's most of the show.
So I'm sad that StarCraft 2 took so long to embrace its identity from Blizzard's side. What do I mean by that? Well, so eventually down the line, let's say the game's 10 years old now. Like let's say 7 years in, they did those advertisements that were like, oh, this is hardcore, we're hardcore, like, oh, this is a hardcore game. Like, so the game has thrived off the fact that it is a hard esport, right? And to this day, there's still like 200,000, 250,000 people, laddering every month or whatnot and stuff like that. So there's still those people that exist. There is still that amount of people that are playing every single month. I'm so happy that it now got taken out of the hands of Blizzard, of their esports. I love Blizzard, don't get me wrong, but like they mismanaged what StarCraft 2 should have been totally. And we still do not have a proper esports tab in this damn game, right? And like it has been we have been saying it since the very beginning. You know, the one way to have cross pollination from your players to getting them to watch some esports extra is by having it in their face. And they were very, very scared about doing this and maybe putting people off and being too forceful and stuff like that, which is why the StarCraft account on Twitter, there is suddenly an esports StarCraft account as well. And it's like, well, you're missing a huge portion of this audience because you're scared of, for some reason, alienating these people. Like, no, just do it. If they don't like it, they're not going to click on it or something like that. Having an esports tab in game would then facilitate the ability for these people to be cross-pollinated into potential actual esports audience, and then StarCraft would, keep pushing even further and further and further when it comes to audiences. The audience was already growing over the last 2 or 3 years, and then this Corona thing happened, and it was like, because it was recovering off the back of what Blizzard actually did with, it was doing well, then Blizzard came along and it kind of did what it did. God, there's so much I want to say about this. That's not even on your topic. I'm so sorry, but
they're good, dude. That's important stuff. Just to chime in real quick, just more content creator connections within a game client. And I don't know what game's doing the best at that, but imagine if we could have the Pylon show on live in Battle.net right now. So you finish your ladder game, you get upset, and you're watching Artosis on his show, right? So more integrations like that, definitely.
Watch is cool, but like, does it like push the what this is supposed to, like? StarCraft is an esport game. There are people playing it. There are casual playing team and stuff like that. But the whole soul and identity of it,
it's
like
League.
And
very much so.
They embrace it more, I feel.
Well, especially when you mention there's like a StarCraft Esports Twitter and there's a StarCraft Twitter, right? And the esports shit doesn't really get on the regular StarCraft Twitter. The thing is, I don't know how many times people at Blizzard have quoted to me that most players play the single player, or like co-op is bigger than fucking the game. Okay, the reason why StarCraft is still around is not because people care about Kerrigan and Raynor. Okay, I don't give a fuck how many people played the single player. The reason it's still around and we're still looking at StarCraft 1 and StarCraft 2, StarCraft 1 is 22 years old, StarCraft 2 is 10 years old, is because of the fucking esport. It is an esport, like you said. Why is Street Fighter still around? Is it because of that shit, terrible single player? No! It's because it's a competitive game and people like it, right? So, what a fucking waste. Like, you can tell this shit happens from people in suits that are like, well, here are the metrics and here's how we're going to make money. And it's like, guys, let's just look at it realistically for a moment. It's an esport. That's why this game is so epic and still around. So I agree with what you just said.
It drives me crazy and actually crazy. Like, if you care too much about something, you're gonna go insane. And because and I have become insane off the back of this, because I might not be day in, day out StarCraft, but it is the game that I still love. Sorry if my mic just peaked because I'm getting loud. And my neighbors probably hate me. But like, I watch all these other games doing this that I've gone to, and I'm like, wow, I really wish we'd had that in StarCraft. Like, again, the esports tab and the way that they're curating it and things like that. And I watch it in these games that don't have the longevity of a StarCraft, don't have the dedicated audience of a StarCraft, and it just makes me insane with rage how much StarCraft could have benefited from all of those things. And it's not like Blizzard is totally adverse to doing it. As soon as money came into the picture, Overwatch League, for example, they were like, we should probably do that. We should probably put an esports tab in the game, because if we don't, we're not going to get our return on investment in 5 years, which they're probably not going to. And then all of these non-endemic sponsors are going to be like, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't do esports, right? Like, but just because StarCraft didn't have that, they didn't feel the compunction, or I don't know. I don't know what the reason is in the back, but there could have been so many augmenting things to level up StarCraft as a whole, not just esports shows, I suppose. I'll stop now.
No, well, I mean, those points you bring up, those are things from other games that would help StarCraft Esports. So it's it is on topic actually, James.
And
Great job.
Too good actually makes a good point in the chat. He said single player made them the bulk of the money. The core audience stick around for multiplayer. Esports is long term marketing to keep the IP alive for a new single player campaign. So I think the point is the campaign works for StarCraft. Esports has been the heartbeat of the game, no doubt. So just the proper decisions need to be made so they can work together. And I think you guys are bringing up some great points on the esports side of it. StarCraft could definitely do a lot. I think Total Biscuit came up with the idea back in the day of the ads in the arena in the game. I'm not sure how much actively that's happening, but I know logo tournaments are putting their branding in the games and whatnot. But there's and then there's like team skins and all that we're seeing from other games. So there's that's the trick there. Just developers being open to incorporate these esports things, but they're kind of progressive. They're kind of new stuff, so it could be a little bit nervous for a boardroom to embark on something like that. So
it also surprises me to a certain degree how few extra teams come into StarCraft currently in the current space. And let me just kind of elaborate on that a little bit. Sorry if I'm talking too much, guys, but just,
no, it's a talk show, dude.
We're chilling.
Yeah.
Me and Nate are enjoying this.
Normally I'm the host, and I say Nate, and then that's my done.
No,
But,
that's me.
Why,
That's me,
hello
Gary.
there, James.
So, of course, I think it hurts StarCraft that there is this perpetuated notion that, like, even when I talk to other other esports, they're like, "Oh, but StarCraft's dead," like, because the community did that to themselves by like having the Reddit just being like, "Oh, dead game," like you just hurting the game that way. And then as that actually happened, like I think a lot of teams now probably kind of feel the same way years and years on. But realistically speaking, if you pick up a StarCraft player right now, I think it's a pretty decent return on investment relative to a lot of these games where you're picking up 5 guys, you need a team house, you need to send them to all these tournaments when Corona calms down. But you like sometimes they're not really giving you that much return on investment relative to one dude who could be really bloody good at the game. Raise Your Edge is a team that came in recently, and I'm pretty sure they're probably quite happy with their investment currently. I mean, they had Zest, who got, what was it, second place at Katowice. Like, that was like after he'd just been picked up. And, I mean, Raise Your Edge is literally poker players and gamblers, not gamblers, but you know what I mean, right? They understand this decision making behind all of this. So I don't know. I feel like more teams could quite easily come into the space, pick up players, and get a lot of good return on investment in terms of exposure in inverted commas.
Sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think more economic systems to benefit players. Blizzard did do a good job, right, with the voice packs. I think most of you guys have voice packs in the game, so that might be something that has been good. But so more things like that it's helping out either creators or players. I guess that would be a pretty big key in this. How can you directly benefit your pro players in the game of StarCraft? And also, how do you benefit the players that are doing well within the actual game so that people care about being top 100 on the ladder, so on and so forth?
Yeah.
There's so many pieces to all of this. And just, with stuff like the way that the gaming industry is moving towards the most popular games right now are games that are run as services. And that completely took over, even just outside of games, like just the regular software market for operating systems, stuff like Adobe products, almost anything that you can pay for digitally is way cheaper, and it's a subscription or it's free where you kind of get nickel and dimed along the way for stuff like, I mean, we've had the conversation a million times about how StarCraft isn't really that game, but it's such a tragic thing because it's not that StarCraft doesn't have a lot of people who play. It's not that people don't buy the war chests, people don't watch the tournaments and maybe buy apparel and stuff, but it's like, imagine that you have your big chain restaurant, you run a steakhouse, right? That makes like 1,000 times more than a McDonald's, but you also have a McDonald's and you're like, well, where are you going to focus your priorities if it's not in an area where you're getting an unusually high amount of traffic, right? Like, and that's the biggest difficulty is, you know, they're not looking at what's not even necessarily like, oh, does StarCraft have the potential to do this stuff? But when it comes to the esports side of things, then my mind just goes back to the whole issue with licensing, and it comes down to all of that stuff. Like, you know, what incentive does Blizzard have to advertise other companies' stuff inside of their own, you know, show or product, right? So then what incentivizes a team to want to sponsor people when Blizzard is going to unilaterally decide that, oh, because your team happens to be affiliated with, you know, like a CS:GO betting website or something like that, like we're just never going to let you do anything at all, even though it's completely unrelated to like what we're doing here. And there are many arguments that you can make for why you should or shouldn't have certain types of sponsors. But outside of that conversation on itself, you know, if you have to rely on only being able to exist in a space at the mercy of, you know, the tournament licensors like that, when there are so many different ones, I think that's what creates a lot of the big problems. There's not really like there is no first party tournament platform that like owns the licenses for the games that they're running outside of the companies themselves, which is kind of a weird, you know, it's like, I don't even know how you would do that. I don't know if you just establish a second company under yourself and make it its whole own thing and then license your game to them and they're just their own actual production company, because it usually ends up being something like half baked, like with Blizzard Esports, like as an example, where you had people that were being stretched between game development teams and having to interface with them and also being like an employee of the company outside of being told to work on a project that's completely unrelated to what, you know, the other 80% of the people who actually make video games are working on. And I don't know. I don't think that that's an easy question to solve, but like at least on the subject of like how do you make it more accessible, how do you make it profitable? There needs to be like some sort of medium or platform that actually allows for these things to be possible in a way that doesn't make companies like not want to interact with each other, because corporations they're going to have to shake hands over a lot of this type of stuff to actually have something that can last and exist for a decent amount of time.
I have a weird situation I'm in, right? Where I work on a game that is in two different universes. Okay, right? Hold on for a second. I work on PUBG PC, right? And I also work on PUBG Mobile, right? And this is the perfect example, and I don't think there's many examples of like this anywhere else in gaming, of what can happen if a game is treated two completely different ways. All right. So PUBG PC had the world at its feet at the beginning of things, right? And it was kind of buggy and didn't really include much or whatever. And it kind of declined. There's still a lot of people playing it. It's not like it's by no means a dead game. But the esport isn't exactly as big as it probably should be, considering the money that people put in. And then on the other side, on the flip side, I do PUBG Mobile, which is exactly the same game, right? It's exactly the same game. However, it's ran by effectively a different company. And they have an esports tabbing game for a long time, and they put in a load of skins and they do a load of microtransactions, and then they kind of push it onto, you know, like all these other emerging markets and things like that. And it's massive. It's huge. It's possibly one of the biggest, if not the biggest mobile game or biggest games like that exist. Like some of their players have 1.5 million followers on Instagram and stuff like that and whatnot, right? So it's really strange to watch one path where PUBG PC could have been arguably bigger if they'd have made these choices where they've integrated these microtransactions and integrated all of this stuff, and then watching mobile go the way it does and it be that way. So I just wonder what would have happened with a lot of StarCraft situations if they'd have tried to push some of these little things a little bit more and not care too much about what they thought was this weird public perception that these people didn't want competitive pushed on them. You know, do you know what I mean? A little bit.
I mean, StarCraft has a lot of check marks for it can work. Like you have the legacy, you have best talent in all the esports. We all come from StarCraft. None of us are going to disagree with that. You have a community that's large, international. So I think what Dan was mentioning earlier about what can StarCraft learn from others at this point? I think it's a great point. It's like, yes, there was a time where everyone was kind of learning from StarCraft, but now StarCraft is learning from others. But StarCraft has so many of those check marks that can really push it in a good direction. So I think it's a great topic for discussion. And I think StarCraft's in a great place to really leverage that. Like, honestly, all things considered, I think StarCraft's in a good spot to really leverage it.
Well, it feels like StarCraft has undergone like so many different visionary changes since it came out at this point, and now we're on visionary change number like 6 with ESL. But as Nate said, right, it's like, what's the long-term play? This is like a 3-year deal that we have StarCraft 2 on, and it's like, well, what happens after that, right? And that's kind of the question. We were all very excited to have a 3-year deal in the works, and with an esports company instead of a publisher trying to make an esports division, kind of, but like, are they going to keep the funding? And yeah, it's
someone like Apollo at the helm who really cares.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that kind of stuff, which helps.
Hello.
Hi, James.
Do that. We have
Hello, James.
Yes.
Sorry for invading. Thanks for having me on, by the way. I really liked what you're talking about, so
yeah,
I
thanks.
kind of wanted to getting involved.
Too good. If you could introduce yourself real quick for everyone. Not everyone watching is probably old school enough to really remember.
Yeah, I'm James as well, or Too Good. I do a little bit of esports, and when StarCraft 2 was the resurgence of kind of international esports, you can say, back in 2010, I was around a little bit, just helping hosting and also connecting cool people to cool companies like Apollo, and I think sometimes we had Nate as well. So sorry about that. We didn't always work out, but yeah. So just been in esports a while, and at the moment, actually, why this conversation is really interesting to me is I really love your scene, etc. Because I was a tiny bit involved, and then also we're making a esports game, and so I've been having a lot of conversations with teams, sponsors, developers, and players. And yeah, there's some things that you could say on some things I could say on the topic, which might be interesting to hear for where you are in StarCraft 2, or at least my opinions. But who knows? No. Maybe it doesn't make sense.
Totally. I would love to hear what you have to add to this.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, like, I'll start with the dark side. Like, when everyone says a game is dead, it's really not, because there's still a core audience playing it, right? It's just that what scale is that core audience? And if you look at esports now compared to where it was in StarCraft, where StarCraft 2 kind of blew up and got everybody reconnected to what this esports phenomenon was, name me all the esport games. You can't. Like, who watches here Rainbow Six? Who watches here PUBG Mobile? Obviously Kaelaris, because he works
Rainbow Six is awesome.
Yeah, but like every Rocket League and all these other games, everybody kind of has their own. Esports is quite spread, right? So StarCraft 2 is obviously one of the most legit esports, and when it comes to your infrastructure, it really comes down to what Blizzard are willing to do for it. Because Rainbow Six, even though I would say it doesn't have the legacy, obviously, of StarCraft 2. StarCraft 2 is considered, among the top tier of the kind of esport titles when it comes to, what you need to, how much you need to push yourself to get to the top, right? Because it's such a challenging game. But the thing about Rainbow Six, and this is what people don't understand, is that Rainbow Six could be any other game that's on Steam that has, 50,000 concurrent players. It could be Warframe, right? But what that means is it just makes a shit ton of money. And what they've been able to do in the Rainbow Six side of things is they've been very generous to these teams. So I took a bunch of meetings with team owners, and I'm like, hey, how can I get you involved in our small game where maybe our core audience is roughly the size of StarCraft 2? And they were like, we just don't want to lose money. Okay.
Yeah.
Rainbow Six, I was like, so why have you got a team in Rainbow Six? They're like, because we make money. And I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, they have all these systems in the game. They give us all this stuff. And now our player salaries are through the roof, right? They're like 10K going 15, almost up to 20 or something, right? This is the kind of conversations I've had. So I'm looking at this and then I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, this isn't a game I follow at all. I still follow some StarCraft, I watch some fighting games and watch some Quake and Dota, obviously. And I'm completely unaware of this Rainbow Six, but apparently it's just built this amazing ecosystem for the teams. So it's not going anywhere because Ubisoft, I think it is, built, they took the audience size and built an ecosystem. So can Blizzard take the audience size of StarCraft 2 and build an ecosystem? They probably can, but it won't be to the point where teams are literally turning around where you got FaZe Clan, like these new school teams, if that makes sense. Yeah. They're not going to jump in on it because, as far as I can tell from my conversations with teams, is that, they'd like not to lose money unless you've got really big streamers. So if your game is Fortnite, and your game is, anything that has, this huge Instagram, are they esports stars or are they social celebrities? I'm not sure sometimes. But they're way down the cost to get the streamers up. So when we look at StarCraft 2, we're like, okay, there could easily be an ecosystem because there is a core audience and you guys already have tournaments. But where do your streamers sit now? And what would the ecosystem do for the teams, even if Blizzard wanted to invest in building it? Are you at a size where it could make an impact?
Well, okay, so streamer side, what is the biggest for someone playing the game, non-tournament streams? What
Fortnite.
do we peak at? Yeah.
But what did you guys?
Well, hey, also, I don't know did you guys see the Destiny 2? I haven't looked too much at it, but Destiny 2 apparently has some crazy. I don't play it that much, but it has some sort of crazy system where streamers are actually making a ton of money in there. I haven't researched it too much. I don't know if any of y'all heard about it, but
there's definitely cool things that devs can do. So Epic Games do a creators code, right? So if you're a Fortnite streamer and they use your creators code, I think you get, it used to be about 5% of any of the purchases that the user was, spending. And I think they even upped it to 10% around the time that PUBG was getting, popular at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So that's really quite generous. And the cool thing is if you have a creators code, you actually can use it, I think everywhere in any of the microtransactions on different multiplayer games on the Epic Store if the devs want to use it. On Steam, obviously, I think that the devs, if they're selling games on Steam, just kind of, if it's something in the marketplace, they can set that this person gets a percentage, or they can just look at the finances and pay out, which I think is what they do with, Rainbow Six, because I'm not sure about that as much.
Okay, so
but you're saying someone said about the money that they were making from Destiny 2.
Yeah, I wasn't prepared to be too specific. It's just a passing headline I saw. So, but the point is, some of these developers are coming up with some pretty creative solutions to not only benefit just content creators, but also esports professionals. So I think that's what we're trying to figure out here. I guess what can StarCraft do to really help both of them grow, and everything is there. We've seen other games do it, so it's just an algorithm that has to be figured out.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, in the current climate of where I think StarCraft is, and this is from an outside perspective, right? You guys are at the tournaments talking to players, probably have your relationship with Blizzard. What I think will end up happening is RTS needs a return, right? Because what I generally think of what happens in the genres of gaming and esports is they kind of rotate like fashion. So when MOBAs are in, they start fading away a little bit, and then someone releases the next greatest MOBA, and then then the same can happen with Arena FPS or RTS. And so you guys, you were the first, you were the front line, right, going into esports 2010. You've had a few expansions for StarCraft 2. But I actually think that RTS is at this point where if Blizzard were to have a new expansion or some big updates, or even taking any IPs further than the number 2, the resurgence would actually be huge. Because people kind of want something that they haven't had for a while. And I think I saw this in RTS when I was trying to analyze it, because when I'm trying to make games, I'm always thinking like, oh, where's how am I not going to bump into too much competition, when my game dies? And one of the coolest games that came out, which was They Are Billions, right?
Oh yeah.
And it was just this little RTS, but the response to it was so amazing, just because of people haven't had that experience of moving these kind of, almost Command and Conquer style, units around. And so I was like, oh shit, like there's a really big market here. And then obviously Command and Conquer got remastered, and Reforged was meant to be a really big thing for Warcraft 3, but I don't think it was handled very well in terms of polish and production. So there's this market for you RTS players that no one's taking advantage of. And I don't know if Blizzard can do anything with the current StarCraft 2, where it's like a new expansion. Because if they did that, they would have to work with you guys, in my opinion, on building all the ecosystems for the teams, because that guarantees its longevity. I almost feel there needs to be a new RTS that cares about the players, and the when I say esports, it's really a part of the community, because the coolest thing about esports is it's not only the fact that some of you are going to create, get jobs and have a life around it. It's also just, it helps the community. It gives them something with their favorite game that even when they're not playing, they get to watch, right? And it's, so it feels like there needs to be a double whammy, but it feels like RTS, I can't imagine it. I have to imagine that something has to happen in the next kind of 3-4 years with the genre. Like someone's got to attack it. And I think Blizzard are obviously in the best place because they've done all the tech. I mean, we looked into RTS as a kind of like, we do little fun projects for a week, just to kind of relax the team if they're stressed. And, RTS is our programmer's dream, just because of how difficult it is to make an RTS. And I think that's why you don't see a lot of RTSs, because you have to work out, all the collision or the AI or the, and traditionally, it's a smaller market than an FPS. And a lot of game engines are pretty much just built from the ground up that you can make an FPS game if you're using Unreal or anything. Yeah. So to take on an RTS, you have to be this, it's quite courageous, and unfortunately that does affect the StarCraft 2 community, because it is a lot of work.
I think there was a moment in Blizzard in the past 2 or 3 years maybe, where there was some people that did want to push to make a new RTS, and since then, not naming any names, a few of those people are still there, but quite a decent chunk of those people have left, right? They're not there anymore. And I think they still have that same drive. It'll be interesting to see if anything actually comes of that. And I guess Blizzard kind of wanted a little bit of that with Reforged, but geez Louise, was that badly handled at the beginning. And that, but obviously it's the same game just as before, so that's not really going to do too much. A next gen RTS, I think that I almost 100%. There's a lot of people thinking about it, but how do you do it?
But I think if it happens, you'll be top 3 esports again. I can't imagine a new RTS and all the fresh storylines of all these players, because you're very global, right? There's some esports that, like Diabotical, our game, which is kind of a Quake's spiritual successor. We're very popular in North America, Europe, and Russia. StarCraft RTSs, they really do span the globe. So a good RTS is certainly, in my opinion, could come back to a top 3 esports position. But it's about, as we mentioned, I think StarCraft, when it was originally kind of shipped and sold, I think a lot of what it made its money off is its legacy. And a lot of people that don't want to stick around and just want that one experience, they play the single player, right? And so you're getting $60 out of these people that play single player. You've probably made your money back because you're Blizzard and you've got a reputation. And then you've got this multiplayer component, and there was no one doing all these in-game ecosystems back then, really. Dota was only really coming into its first TI was in 2010, and then they started building. So I don't know how many opportunities the Blizzard team have had, maybe to kind of take what you can learn from other game developers to kind of build an ecosystem for the competitive community. And when I say competitive community, it doesn't always mean the top tier. You know, it's also about connecting the tier 2 players, the tier 3 players, and how they get up. You know, obviously ESL and DreamHacks and everybody's done a great job with it, you know, being inclusive and, you know, running the tournaments. Yeah, so it almost feels like it has to be a new IP now, just so they can guarantee that they get sales off the bulk. And we have a similar situation with Quake. So Quake as a game has a similar legacy as StarCraft, and Quake doesn't have a single player campaign, but Doom does. They could actually have been the same game. The Quake multiplayer play style could have been actually attached to Doom, but if you ship a single player Doom, you're probably making 100 million, right? Like Doom is probably making easily 100 million. Quake Champions, standalone multiplayer game, I'd be surprised if it made more than $5 million in its lifetime. I mean, I wouldn't be that surprised, but like I wouldn't go past $10 million. And so imagine it like Doom is our single player. Quake was our multiplayer. They were sold separately, so the Quake support was very minimal. But Blizzard have this great IP where they could sell the single player campaign plus the multiplayer, and if they build the systems, I think you're golden for another, 5-10 years with a new IP.
I thought one thing that a lot of modern RTSs, like post StarCraft 2, I can hear some like feedback.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. One thing that they really miss is and this is a bit more on the game design side of things, not the esports side of things, is the speed or like the tempo of the game. So many RTSs you play nowadays that have recently been made just feel sluggish and really cumbersome to control compared to something like StarCraft 2. I think if somebody kind of upped the tempo of some of these, not those games in particular, but like really struck a decent balance, then it would be,
No, I agree. But I think that comes back to why some people can't take it on. Because if you take an indie programmer team into Unity to try and make a game feel as tight and clean as fast as StarCraft 2, it's going to be difficult. It's why Blizzard are in the best position to always do this, because of their experience and their just amazing tech team, right? They can solve problems. And, unfortunately, because your game's so hard to make, that's why it's not always... you're kind of at the mercy of your developer, because there's no competition for your scene, if that makes sense. Like RTS has the one developer.
Very little. Yeah.
Nate, were you going to chime in there? Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that leads back to, and what you were saying about They Are Billions, something that there's a couple of things about that game that were very interesting when it came out. It was a game that had pretty poor performance on even good computers, because as you've kind of talked about, building an RTS is really, really difficult. A lot of people take for granted the fact that like a StarCraft 2, when you play a multiplayer game, almost must be like 99.9% of your games like are without a flaw in terms of what you're seeing on your screen. Like you don't have things like rubber banding, just the fact that, it slows down, right? But you were able to have those replay files at a very low file size. Like there's a whole lot of small things that are incredibly difficult to do. And, I think even it took League like 6 or some years after they announced they wanted to do replays. I still don't even know if they have that like normally. Maybe they do. But like it's not an easy thing to build into a game. But I also think that one of the reasons why They Are Billions was good is because it was an actual quality RTS product still, because it had a compelling gameplay, but it was also challenging. Like a big part of strategy, when I think about playing strategy and why I like StarCraft, is I approach games like puzzles, right? So I'm like, if I want to move these pieces here, and the goal is that at some point everything's going to fall into place, and you're going to have the result that you're looking for. And a lot of, and like when you look at the other RTSs that failed, it kind of becomes like a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like nobody thought that StarCraft 2 was a failure when it came out. Absolutely nobody. It was like one of the biggest or fastest selling PC games literally like ever. And then the viewership for esports dropped off over the couple of years as other competing titles came in, and the broadcasting platforms that esports were being showed on grew and built audiences for other scenes. But it's not like there were just awful reviews for Legacy of the Void or something, and they're like, oh yeah, no, Blizzard lost their touch. This didn't sell well at all. It was garbage. No, what happened was they ended up putting money into esports programs, and then having had those behind the scenes conversations where you're like, well, we know our viewership's going up, and then somebody behind the scenes is like, well, you see that just we had this tournament with 100,000 viewers, but we didn't sell 100,000 copies of the game. So you have teams going in and building these products and these shows with absolutely no plan on how they're going to even try to capitalize on it, and then using the obvious result of that to justify not doing it more, right? So you have people kind of putting themselves in these circles where they say, "Oh, RTS is dead because look what happened to StarCraft." You know, all these missed opportunities that led to one instance being used by the entire industry, to justify like, well, yeah, well, you see, even StarCraft isn't as big as it used to be. You know, quietly disregarding the fact that it's somehow still alive after 10 years, be able to get into, the tens of thousands of viewers and close to 100,000 for the global finals.
I mean, I kind of want, if I could just jump in real quick, I want to mention just two things. First, I remember when StarCraft, and all of us do, when StarCraft was like compared to Counter-Strike or Dota, and only one could survive. We all remember this. Only one could be the best, and the rest are dead, or however it was. And so that brings me to a question of RTS. How much room is there for RTS titles in the current ecosystem, right? Where yes, we clearly have multiple games that can succeed on a very nice level. And I know Too Good, I'm very curious your thoughts on this because you're developing a game. So you have your MOBA space, you have your FPS space. So I come to the question of how many RTSs can actually exist in this market? And my conclusion is, well, it's got to be StarCraft related or Blizzard related, just because of what we've all been saying of how the legitimacy and legacy that StarCraft has. I don't know if an RTS could come from another place than what StarCraft has right now from Blizzard and esports. And then another thing I wanted to bring up real quick is free to play, because this is something that Rocket League has dealt with, especially with teams. I got a Team Liquid jersey right now. Liquid just jumped into Rocket League very recently. So there's a lot of things going on with is Rocket League doing things right with how they're approaching teams and whatnot. But Rocket League should go free to play, I think, right? And that's one of those questions that's out there. Fortnite free to play, PUBG free to play, amazing success. So that's another question I throw at Too Good, is his thoughts on the free to play without spoiling what he's doing.
Free to play is the way to go, because if you're a multiplayer game with live service, you want as many people in because you get better matchmaking, right? And Artosis won't have to be shouting at his opponents on ladder, which is by far my most enjoyable thing to watch in the morning now. I actually, when I go to your stream, I click clips just to see where you rage, and I'm quite impressed you rage on your wins. I didn't think that was a thing.
I'm an equal opportunity rager. It's
very inclusive. So free to play is definitely the way to go, because it just maximizes your multiplayer audience. If you built a single player campaign, sure, you can sell the product. And there was always this conversation in StarCraft, right? You guys know it, a long time ago, where people were like, hey, you should have sold the single player, but let people get StarCraft multiplayer for free. And they didn't do that. And I did speak to someone who's not at Blizzard anymore. And I remember he's like, well, why do you think, Blizzard don't do free to play games? And it kind of sounded like, this is my take from it, not what he said, but it was like, people pay for Blizzard quality, right? So I think there was this kind of, I was like, yeah, but it's like you've got, you could get people into the multiplayer for free, and then if they want the single player experience, which a lot of people do, they could have paid. And then Axeltoss, you mentioned about previous to free to play, which I think is an obvious yes.
I was talking about just the room there is for multiple RTSs. When I think about it, there's only one RTS at StarCraft, and well, I mean, there's a lot of RTS, but like as far as legitimacy in the space, and I don't know if more than one can really thrive in the current esports ecosystem, I suppose.
Yeah, I think one is the number that you need, but it needs to be probably rotated a little bit faster. Because one of the most interesting things about a new game coming out is watching people's learning curves. Because there's going to be some people that were really, peaked in StarCraft 2, and then you've got these up-and-comers that needed 2 more years. And then if there's the next game, they can have their legacy there, and it's very encouraging. I know, people are talking about, AoE 2 and stuff, and yeah, there is esports around that, and it is cool. There are tournaments, but it doesn't grab the stage. And so when a new RTS comes out, it really, for it to grab the attention outside, if you had Blizzard's name, you could just ship another RTS and you could do the math on what you're going to spend on it, what you're going to make, and you'll end up okay. If you're outside of Blizzard, You have to go to the community, the pro teams, the pro players, the casters, the hardcore fans, etc. And you literally have to say, what can we build you within this multiplayer ecosystem to keep your scene alive? Because actually, that's what we're doing in Diabotical. We don't have the brand name of Quake, right? Quake can ship a game and everybody has heard about it and knows about it. And it's crazy. I actually did a test advert on Facebook because I was like, I'm going to try this, right? So I threw in like $50 and ran this ad. And I kind of said like Diabotical, blah, 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 spiritual successor of Quake. And there were so many comments going, what the fuck? This looks nothing like Quake, nothing like... Because the thing is, to me, Quake is the esports side of it, right? It's the competition, it's the movement and stuff like this. Mm-hmm. But to everybody out there in the world, because Quake is so big, Quake is this, legacy, kind of lorecraft game or whatever it is. To them, they have such a different experience to what Quake is, to what actually Quake Esports is. So when I kind of did this comparison to Facebook, everyone was like, get fucked. If I do the comparison on Twitch TV, everyone was like, oh yeah, you have strafe jumping and a rocket launcher. I get it. So I think StarCraft also has that. If you say, what is StarCraft to people would be like, well, that's my nostalgia. That's this. They don't necessarily always think of it as this pure multiplayer esports game. So if you come in as a new developer and you come in to try and take on RTS, you have to go to the community and get them to back you. Because actually, the reason that people would play a new RTS if it wasn't made by Blizzard is if it was kind of almost signed off with ex-pros, ex-commentators, and you built all these cool systems with, the idea of supporting the community and teams. And so what we're doing, which is, we don't know if we're successful, is essentially we lost faith in the developer, its software, to make Quake. And we did it ourselves with the community. So I can say about over 50% of our company is hired from the community. Our esports manager was an ex-pro gamer. Our programmer was a big Quake fan. Our UI programmer was an ex-pro gamer called Noctis, who was, played at a pro level. Our community manager is someone from the Quake scene. We literally just went and delved in and just looked for the best people from the community. And actually, not to fantasize about, something that is very difficult to even imagine. I think that the kind of the Team Liquid and the StarCraft community, actually, if they were organized, could actually make an RTS game together, because there's some really, really, really talented people on, the forums and, within the community. It's just about who organizes them and how do you get it done. So either it's that or you wait on Blizzard.
Exactly. And off the back of that, too good. And then the next question is have people lost faith in Blizzard? And I think for a lot of people, the answer is yes. Am I wrong?
I think that's kind of where the climate is right now, unfortunately. Mike Morheim was there on the board for a little while. Now he's gone. It's been brought up. You've got, things being written about, is it Bobby Kotak or apparently even the members, the investment, the guys investing are questioning how much money he's taking as his salary. So even the people making too much money is saying, hey, the trouble is like, there's always amazing people within the company at Blizzard and they can do amazing things. They have this amazing experience, but yeah, they lost their, I think they lost their cool a little bit of their charm.
Well, they're very corporate, right? I mean, 99% of all questions that you ask are answered by, some guy that I can't even tell you the name of is just not going to greenlight anything, right? Like that's when people have questions like, why can't we get this? It's not. It's a very easy system that allows everybody to just kind of push around whoever's fault it is, and like, the executives say we can't do it. It's not profitable, and they're like, whose job is it to find a way to make it do that? I don't know. It's not on our team, right? And then you just kind of you get kicked around.
Soon TM took on a very different meaning for me in the last 5 years. Whereas like at the beginning, like 5 years ago, between like 10 and 5 years ago, I was like Blizzard quality. But Soon TM for me now means something completely different, where I'm just like, something's lost in the void. It's never happening, or it's not going to be the right way.
And if you consider the companies that have really understood esports and adapted, right? Blizzard had it. Its software had it. We were StarCraft, Brood War Esport, and we were Quake Esports. both of those companies, I think, are falling behind. Look at Riot Games. Riot Games are new kids on the block in comparison. They had their hit title, League of Legends, and look at all their announcements. Everything is an esport game. It's Valorant is a Counter-Strike kind of take on Counter-Strike. They've got a fighting game in the mix. They've got a card game in the mix. It's nuts. And then also, Valve are the kind of quiet ones, but they really focus on building systems. That support the community, and they're not so out there with what they try and do in terms of timing and finances, because obviously they've I don't know how true this is, but Steam is their cash cow, you could say, if you were to look at the company, but they do amazing games. Yeah, go on.
Oh, I was going to say, like, yeah, I kind of have been feeling like if there is going to be another RTS that's successful, it would have to be through someone like Riot, because, like you mentioned, it's hard to make an RTS, right? So you can't really get an indie publisher to make the next RTS. It's just and some of the indie publishers actually make RTS games where I'm like, wow, this could be great, if it had the polish, but it can't get it.
Yeah,
and
it's hard to do that. Yeah, to get the polish, it's very difficult.
With Blizzard, it seems like, are we going to get another RTS? I mean, I hope so, but it seems like the margins aren't high enough. They want World of Warcrafts and they want Hearthstones and stuff like that.
But it's a shame, because what? I think if it was the old Blizzard, I think they would take a percentage of their decision making. And this is what I think when I run the company, our little company, and it's not big, so it's very hard to compare. But it's like, let's say that we'll make a percentage of the decisions that keep the company alive, because we have to keep the company alive. But we can make a percentage of decisions that are just things that we think are cool to do. And I think that when Mike Morhaime was there, and some of the, if I call them old guard, I think that actually they would be like, hey, we just want to do this because it's cool. I think there could be people in Blizzard that still want to do that, but it's like, how do you get it done? And I think Riot might be now a little bit more of a forward-thinking company. It's a real shame, though. What I will say is, it's a real damn shame that we don't have modding in some of these, IPs, right? Because if you look at the Source 2 engine, which is essentially what I think Dota 2 is running on, because it's been so upgraded from Source, there is this small modding, but not maybe big enough to do it. And every single game that we have in esports, kind of now, I would say, not all of them, but the majority of them all came from modding. And all these developers are like, nah, we're good. And so if there was a modding potential, I think there could be something that grabs the initial attention of somebody. And then if you remember, everything was modded prior to being at Valve. Someone modded the Team Fortress, etc. And then Valve were like, okay, come here, we'll make this. Dota was a mod. Come here to Valve, we'll make Dota 2. And I'm not sure how, if that's possible anymore.
Almost every big esport right now is born off a mod, if you think about it, right? MOBAs, battlegrounds, like battle royales, even Overwatch to a certain degree. It's kind of crazy.
I say obviously you can still mod, in other games. FPS is a lot easier to mod in. We get a lot of great stuff out of that. The battle royale was essentially that in a sense, right? And it was a surprise kind of game genre, which is great. But yeah, it's harder to see the community doing something with RTS. So go on.
Okay, I was gonna mention, I've heard a lot of people say that, like, other companies are afraid of even trying because StarCraft it's so hit the mark and it's hard to win over the fans. Like, would you agree with that? Because, like, if you look at some of the more middle of the more middling companies, like, for instance, Dawn of War 3 came out several years ago, right, by Relic. And like the original Dawn of War 1 was a great RTS game. Dawn of War 2 was pretty good. Dawn of War 3, the amount that they missed the mark on making an RTS that anyone would try to play competitively, it was crazy how far away they were from the mark. It was like, you guys did not even try to get an RTS that anyone would play competitively here.
Yeah, but here's the thing, right? Do they even talk to you guys, those dev teams?
No. Which is kind of sad, because I've been trying to get in touch with Relic, because they're making AoE 4, and it's like, that's the only big RTS that has any sort of announcement behind it. You can't even fucking get in contact with them.
Yeah,
They won't even
so
respond. It's like, what?
I mean,
I'm Artosis. Hi, I like RTS games. Can I talk to you? And it's like yelling into the void.
so this is my theory on kind of how to break into the scene if you're a developer that can't do the polish and have the legacy as like a Blizzard, right? If I was going to make the next Counter-Strike, the first thing I would try and do is hire Forrest and Get Right to be lead designers.
Yeah,
even if they weren't, I want them in, and I want them in the company, and I want them to literally direct me around all the weapons, everything, right, with the team. Because if you got Forrest and Get Right, who are legends within Counter-Strike, even if you ship a Counter-Strike that doesn't have the polish of Counter-Strike Go, guess what? The Counter-Strike players will try it because actually it's got their names attached to it, right? And they're going to help steer the ship. So even if they're not classically whatever trained designers, which I don't think is necessarily a thing, it's such a big importance to involve them in the thing. One side for marketing, second side for their experience. In RTS, you would kind of do a similar thing. Unfortunately, they'd have to put up with being told it's not good enough, it's not good enough, it's not good enough. Because they might have a vision, and then you're like, look, if you want this to be played as a multiplayer for 5 years, it has to be like this. Like this has to work this way, and they have to be flexible enough to change it. I will say, this is my experience with designers. When you're at school, this is what I figured out. I think the smart kids at school don't go away wanting to be game designers. They go away wanting to be, they can be programmers, mathematicians, physicists, lawyers, they can just kind of scale past it, right? And so there's some kids at school that want to be game designers, and then they end up game designers. And I think it's so precious to them that they hold on to their ideas to the point where it's like it's hard for them to go and take criticism about something that isn't finished from the community. So I have found, in my opinion, that I've had very odd times talking to game designers from other companies when I was a pro gamer. But guess what? Now I'm a game developer. Holy shit, these conversations are different. They love talking to me. Now it's like, oh, what do you think of this, this, or this? But when I was a pro gamer, it was just like, oh, you're a pro gamer, yeah? And then there was like this defense barrier. Like we were trying to tell them how to do their jobs. But now I'm within this weird inner circle of game developers where people kind of like one of us, and I can talk to them, even though actually I'm more a pro gamer and probably a shitty game designer.
The change of title means so much.
I want to throw in a question for Too Good also. Kind of the broad idea of the importance of the parameters of the esport, right? We've talked about it before, or whatever. Like some games are longer than others. Rocket League is a big advantage. It's 5 minute game. Super simple to get into. One of my favorite game development decisions was Arena in Hearthstone, where this was kind of a newer game mode, but it was short and sweet. It had drafting. It was pretty cool. Very unique focus. So I don't know if an answer for StarCraft is like a play on the game mode itself, where we all love StarCraft and how it is, but some criticisms might be, oh, it takes a little too long. It's a little too complicated. Is there an arcade micro version that works with it? So the question to you, Too Good, in that realm is like, I guess with your game that you're coming up with, like, is that something you're looking at? Like what your game mode
we think about this all the time. So to kind of give a little bit on this, it's like Quake Team Deathmatch is 20 minutes. It's hell of a fatiguing. Our Team Deathmatch is 12 minutes, right? It's just the right amount to tell the story. It has enough power-ups in it. It has enough weapon respawns to swing one way and swing back the other a few times. Dota, even though it's a longer game mode, it has phases that break it up, right? It has waves of entertainment. You have the picking phase, and you have the draft phase, and then you have the the laning phase, and then you have the roaming kind of support phase, and then it goes into late game. So it escalates. It's not the same experience all the way through. I think that StarCraft will need to be the length kind of roughly where it is to keep the consistency of like the matches and strategy, because they can end quickly, they can end slowly as well. It really depends on the matchup. The one thing I always felt I was missing for a viewer, and you can hate me for saying this within an RTS, is like I wanted more focus points as a viewer for me, and that's why I loved Warcraft 3 so much to spectate, because I could continue to watch this hero progress And I almost felt like if I could have StarCraft 2 with a hero that was not as powerful as Warcraft 3, but was effective, and there was a choice of them, and when it died, I didn't need to have to resummon it massively from the altar that takes 1 minute, but actually it could be quicker. There could be a storyline within your storyline of macro and micro, right? And I think that it really focuses the viewer to have some storyline to follow around. And I hate saying that because I know a lot of people are purists in StarCraft and StarCraft is sacred. But I do think that there's something to learn, both not on the, because you talked about the ecosystem before, which, I think you guys are all correct on. And then Axeltoss's, kind of question about the game length, etc. I think there is progress that can be made in RTS, which it makes the genre very exciting because it feels like there is more to be done here. Not necessarily on the game length, but yeah.
There's people that are trying. I've been to a few studios, like nobody's probably heard of this game, but like Drop Zone, like it was tried to be a hybrid of
Drop
RTS.
the 3v3, yeah, I know that game.
Like there's stuff that's been tried. Artosis, you've played a lot of like these other RTSs that are coming along. Like I think for the They Are Billions example that you use, like it's a very good game. It's really fun to play and stuff like that. But the trials and tribulations that you have to get over of making a PvE RTS, where it's like you can make things as overpowered as you want because you're against the computer always, compared to like an asymmetric RTS. It sounds the hurdles that you have to get over across that are different. I mean, it doesn't have to be an asymmetric RTS. It could be something completely different, right? It's just I feel like there are people probably trying, but it's so difficult as you're saying.
Yeah. And when it comes to game modes, like in StarCraft 2, didn't you guys have this kind of co-op mode, like co-op multiplayer?
Very popular.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
and
amazing.
It's hell of a popular, right? So if you're going to make a new RTS, where do you want to put the focus on? Like doesn't need to be like that for esports, but there should be, if that is where people gravitate towards the most, make sure that's awesome and at the forefront of new players coming in the game. And then they can go to those 1v1s and they can go to those, because in Quake, for example, and I'll go to Diabotical because it's our example. Diabotical, our esport modes are 1v1. They're not fun for everybody. And also team deathmatch, not that fun. We have a casual game mode, which is still team-based, and it's called Wipeout, and you spawn with every gun. And you play on a team where you're with like 4 other players on your team. And the cool thing about every player that you can add to your team, you are essentially have less anxiety on your performance, right? So when I played Warcraft 3, I always went for 2v2 because I was just like, I didn't want the 1v1 pressure. I felt the 2v2 was more fun. And I think that StarCraft 2, there's more to be done maybe with this co-op multiplayer mode as a stepping stone for new players coming in if there was a new RTS. Because if you just go out and say, here's a 1v1 RTS and it's just 1v1 and it's hardcore, it's like, you
turn people off quickly.
Yeah.
I think another part about what made that so successful, though, is it also allows people who have interests within the actual universe of the game to be able to like say, oh, I don't just like Terran or Zerg, right? Like I like Infested Terran. I have that level of actual like choice in front of you, and that kind of comes back to the whole, you don't have to really worry about balance, right? Because it's that PvE experience. But there's a lot to really take into account with that, and like why people find identity with like the champions or heroes that they play in these MOBAs, right? What makes people attached to them. And when you look at where StarCraft is now, right? It's an extremely conservative, very reserved community. Like the majority of people respond very aggressively when you talk about making changes to the way that like factions work or units work. Even claiming that like one faction has a 55% win rate will get you like the most insane amount of hatred, right? So the other challenge then becomes as well when you have people like, when you're working on a game like this, you have to be willing to look past, just the legacy of what it was, because a lot of what is there is still very heavily grounded in the designs that were put up and released in 1998. And I'm not saying it's bad because it's a fantastic game, but there is so much room for progress to be made in ways that people will 100% look down on at first. But over time could smooth out a lot of issues people didn't even realize, right? That existed,
sure.
that they were playing around.
I want to jump in
Dispelling
on that
anxiety.
real
Sorry,
quick
go
if I can. To the point about classic, like I remember when I first played StarCraft. I remember, and it wasn't 1v1. It was use map settings, and I know Blizzard has been trying to address like the arcade and making that better and all that. I don't know if that's part of a key to what we're talking about. Like just the point of like, how do you really accept these newer folks? And for me, I was one of those newer folks. I didn't really play 1v1 when I first started in Brood War. I jumped straight into use map settings. They had the lobbies that people could just make and jump in and whatnot. It felt a little bit more community somehow. If you guys remember those super old days, but that might be part of the key too. Just really optimizing that arcade or just figuring that side of it out.
I think dispelling the anxiety, as you're kind of mentioning here too, good. It almost might be one of the things that's key to trying to bridge it. I mean, aside from all the systems aside and everything like that, StarCraft is a very intimidating game, and RTS is a pretty intimidating genre for a lot of people. Like, how do you get a lot of people in to try and play something? And maybe a team orientated effect might be.
I certainly think like I would like to put something like if I would put something team a little bit easier to get into, a bit forefront. It could even be 3v3 or something. I wouldn't even be against each of the players having a hero that they could TP back to base once their army was wiped, so they didn't feel like they'd lost everything. And I know that sounds silly, but it's like, as he said, you reduce anxiety because they still feel like they've got this focal point and a chance. And then maybe when you play 1v1, like in Warcraft 3, you can have 3 heroes, etc. But they're very minimal to the impact of the game, but enough to be interesting and to focus on. And then if they are enjoying that, I would say that RTS would still probably need modding. I think if you did good tower defenses again and good this again and good that again, it's something that people can just chill out every once in a while while they wait for their mates to come online, and then they can go back into a 3v3 match or a 2v2 match. It's like, I'm not sure if it's too separate having those arcadey modded modes away from the 1v1, but I would say that you're kind of trying to build a larger community, right? You want everybody under this brand of either StarCraft 3 or another IP, and you want to keep them in the game and keep them informed and and just enjoy it. So because it will help the ecosystems at the end of the day. If you imagine you build these ecosystems for teams, and there is microtransactions, and some of your heroes from your different factions can be picked as tower defense heroes, but you can still attach customization on them, like a Team Liquid shoulder pad or whatever it is. They might not even play the 1v1, but they might end up just enjoying all these fun little arcadey game modes that they might spend and support Team Liquid and other teams. So the trouble is, when you start scoping a project like this, it just gets bigger, and then you just end up never releasing a video game.
Comes at an interesting time as well, though, because actually Blizzard just like 2 days ago or yesterday or something like that made the map editor and the modding ability like way more, a little bit more accessible, and also like added a ton of stuff to it. So I mean, maybe that'll prompt someone. That'd be nice. But there's a huge list, a swath of notes regarding how much more the map editor can do now.
That's amazing.
Isn't that strange? Isn't that interesting to think about too? Like what I wonder what happened behind the scenes that motivated that to be the next big thing that would end up happening with the game too, right? Not to say that it's not important, but I do wonder sometimes, like, in terms of what we've been getting, or in terms of like any performance improvements, even in the last year and a half, like why specifically target the editor this much when we got like the 3 premium arcade maps like 2 or 3 years ago now, and that like nothing's been added in there. Like, is this their way of saying that they want to do more of this? If it isn't, like, what exactly caused this to happen?
The head of StarCraft 2 now, right? Because Tim Morton left. It's Ryan Shutter, isn't it? And he's the game heart guy. So it kind of makes sense in my head that this would be like a direction that they're looking in now, is something more like this.
The question is, do they own everything in the StarCraft one? Because I know they own everything in the Warcraft 3 one, right? And everyone's like, well, I'm not making it a mod anymore. Like, do they own
I think
everything?
it's still,
in the
as far
StarCraft
as I'm
one?
aware, unless you're going to partner with them specifically, yeah, that's the big catch-all net they throw over everything that you generate in their games.
Yeah, so one of the things we're doing in Diabolical, right, is we put a lot of effort in a map editor. And we haven't got hardcore modding kind of in yet, but we've given people the ability to kind of script and play around with the current mechanics we have in. When we talked about our map editor and what it means to our game, we're like, well, this is the backbone of the game. Because the more people can use this, the more content can be released. There's no way that a development team can focus and release high quality content, but we cannot compete with the community. So post-launch of Diabolical, some of our efforts will go back into the map editor. Now, we'll just get new maps for different game modes, and then if we can get past, kind of into the modding phase and making the modding better, there's a real possibility that someone will make a battle royale or an arcade mode like party mode in the Diabolical map editor, right? And that's huge. So it's really hard to think about how do you monetize, a map editor, and how do you support people creating content. So what we're doing is we're being quite just straight with the community. So we're going to be announcing like a $10,000 mapping contest, right? The mapping contest, this is just for existing maps. But we understand that essentially what we're doing is with the mapping contest, there's lots of people that want to make maps. There's 3 winners, they get paid, the maps go in. Now, if you wanted to excel, kind of building your community, we have to continue doing mapping contests, even each season. So if our season's 3 months long, when the new season starts, there's 3 new maps from the community, right? And it gives replayability, and it gives, new storylines on esports as well, because there's new maps and they're really good quality because you've really incentivized the community. If we were to do modding, we would almost, because you can't ask people to pay for these mods, right? They tried that on Steam, remember, where there was, I think they tried it with Skyrim or something, I'm not sure, and everyone just went crazy. Yeah, and so we as the developer kind of, I think, have to say, we're doing modding competition, maybe give some restrictions, like we want party play modes with 4 players, and XYZ, here's some money for the competition, and then you incentivize people to do that, because even though technically you might own what's in the game because you're making money off it, they also did get paid. Because so when they're doing this, it feels like it's the first step, like that modding, working on the map editor, that's the first step. But Blizzard, they've got the ability to run competitions, right? New map competition, mod competition.
Yeah, they do stuff like that, like the Rock the Cabinet stuff they used to do about use map, and then there's map contests actually that we get all of our pro maps out of. Now that I think about it, that you've brought this up, like in StarCraft 1, there was actually professionally employed, before Blizzard took over everything in StarCraft 2, there's people who did this as a living making maps, and now that we don't have that, they just run contests, and we get a bunch of great map makers to make great maps, and then you have your maps for the year.
Yeah, no, I've said this with our game. I was like, I think in about 6 months, all the best maps are going to be made by the community, because how can we compete with them? So essentially, when we're putting up prizes, we're almost paying them as contractors for their maps. I know, like, if you made a map in Counter-Strike, it's obviously worth a lot more money because it's such a big game. If Valve wanted that, they probably pay you like $30,000 for your map, and then they'd own the rights. But we're a smaller game, so we're like, hey, let's put up $10,000, and then as we grow, if we're successful, then we can do better and bigger mapping contests. But it's the community is the lifeline, so any way you can support them is obvious. But I think cool. All right. I'll try not to say much more now. I've had a lot of time and talk, and I really appreciate you guys.
You're our special guest.
Yeah,
I think that's a good conclusion, though. Like the fact that the community for these kinds of games is so important. Like as you say, like a lifeline, the blood of the game, and any developments and evolutions that can come in a lot of spaces do come off the back of a lot more than potentially just a development team.
Yeah, no, this has been a great conversation, guys. Thank you very much to all of you, and Too Good for jumping on. I guess from there I'll steer us towards the Patreon questions. Too Good, you're welcome to stay if you would like. We just are answering some questions the community left us, or if you
Yep.
need a problem.
I'll mute up and just kind of hang out, but I'll probably say nothing, and then I'll say goodbye at the end, so I get to listen live.
Totally. All right, so I guess let's go over to the Patreon questions, guys. If you want to drop in a Patreon question, you still have a little bit of time. Check out patreon.com/The Pylon Show. All right, let me click on this. Where's our Patreon questions? Already Patreon. Okay, here we go. All right, here we go. Eric asks, what is the best way for a fan of StarCraft 2 to support the scene these days? Subbing to a Twitch and Patreon is a good way to help individuals, and I'm already there. But is there a way to also lift all boats? How can someone help the entire scene, not just individuals?
Talk to your friends about it. Tell your friends about it. Bring it up in conversation with your family, with your pets. Just make it a part of your everyday life, and then I wouldn't stress about anything more than that about any game.
Especially, yeah, like
More
getting
people-
other people involved is good. Like maybe like team games as well. Maybe you just say, "Hey, come and play like a 2v2 or a 3v3." Laugh about it with them. Maybe they get more interested in, the more hardcore side of things.
I mean, I think I'd take a little different approach than the a little bit of the like, hey, come join my game thing. It's because that's just I don't know. As much as I understand, like, go try talking to other people. The biggest ways that you could be impactful and you can make the scene better overall is when you see people talking about StarCraft. When you glance by Reddit and you see something funny or someone posts a clip of like a funny moment in a game that you can relate to, talking about stuff, engaging with people in a positive way. I think goes a really long distance because so many people kind of go by and they see stuff and it's a community that's known for we got a lot of tribalism between the people who play different races and stuff. And people get really combative, probably without even really meaning to. But I think just being able to improve the overall environment of stuff, actively taking part when you see things that you want to engage with, not just doing it for no reason, I think really helps a lot. And when people see other people having a conversation about something, it makes them want to jump in more and talk a little bit more about it too. I just think, if you actively want to help, this is, based on the context of the question, I assume you actively want to help to just make things better. That's one big way that I would suggest without having to put any money into it. The other obvious answer is you can try to contact guys that run these tournaments like Wardy or whatever. You can help raise the prize pools. Obviously, money is always going to help in a scene where we have so many pro players and a lot of tournaments too. So a lot of people do already kind of float that boat, which is why I didn't start with that point.
All right. Thanks for the question, Eric. Bosch asks, Adept to G4. If StarCraft was a chess set, what unit would take the place of each piece? Pawn, knight, king, etc. There would be 3 sets of pieces for each race, so you could choose which one you wanted to play. All right. I mean, Stormhost would be the rook, and Mutalisks would be the horse, and yeah, Adept would be a bishop, I think. Zealots would be pawns.
Who's the king, Artosis?
Yeah.
Maybe Artosis is
Yeah, Artosis.
Tasteless is the queen or something.
Yeah. There you go. He can move better than me, but if I die, it's over. All right. Thanks for the question, Bosch. I'm not sure what else. All right. Shadow Sheep asks, given the knowledge most casters have about the game, meta players, etc., do you or community members actually bet on StarCraft 2 as European bookies offer odds for most major tournaments and matches? Thank you for the constant entertainment.
Oh, that's interesting. So back when I worked at ESL, we weren't allowed to bet on anything. Like ESL told us, just hands down, you're not allowed to bet on anything. But then once I left ESL, I actually started doing it a little bit, and it was surprisingly easy. even for me, who like wasn't really the analysis guy. So, yeah,
Did you? Was it so easy you got banned?
No.
Okay, I'll give you just a little story. So I have a friend in the Quake scene called Faz, and we both started playing Overwatch at the beginning. Nate even came to me with to take TT to commentate it. So anyway, we had so much information on the players because we knew them so well that Faz ended up getting banned after winning $20,000 from one of these websites. Because they were literally like, "We think you have a gambling problem." It's like, it's not a problem if I keep winning. Just give me my money. And so, yeah, it's quite odd how gambling's come in such a big way, and it's they are there to make money. That's definitely a thing. So when you know what's happening, yes, you're going to make money, but when you get too good, sometimes they don't like that, and it's quite lucrative for them. I had conversations with some of the. And I think one of the companies said it was making about over $1,000 a map on Counter-Strike. Damn. For every individual map being played, that a gambling company was making over $1,000. Like a DreamHack event, not even it wasn't like a huge event, but so they're really into it. And the weird thing is that you guys are thinking like you're losing money as the esports community. Trust me, you're not, because actually what's happening is, as far as I can tell, is that there's a lot of people in America that are addicted to gambling, and it just so happens that esports events can run constantly, so they don't even know what's going on, but they go onto the gambling website and they just like, yeah, fuck it, I have no idea who this player is, I'll just bet. So the money that they're making from esports gambling is from people that aren't even in esports, and then it's the esports people, I think, winning the money. It's pretty crazy. There you go.
Yeah, probably.
It's a very good point. That's going to be a big part of the future, right? And there's not as much in the States right now on the gambling side. It's all getting figured out right now in the States. Some of your you have some apps like DraftKings and whatnot, but
Isn't it ultra regulated there? Super regulated.
Definitely. It's like illegal in most states, I'm pretty sure. So it's all still getting navigated here in the States, but I think it's going to be a huge part of betting in esports. My goodness.
Yeah, just because we can put on.
They're hitting a tipping point with sponsorships and like major professional sports in the U.S. I think that's something that's becoming like a thing that's going to happen in the next year or two. So you're going to see gambling sponsors at stadiums and everything over the next few years.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem, people what they want to do with their money, right? It's but I will say that I think it's going to just get bigger and bigger and bigger in esports, just because of how consistent we can be at putting on events. So we really help those companies fill out their, the amount that you can bet, because we don't always need a stadium. We don't always need, a Wimbledon or an F1 racing track, etc. We're a lot more cost effective per bet.
And I personally probably wouldn't bet on anything that I'm working on. I don't know. It might just be a personal thing, I don't know.
It's cleaner that way. It's, especially living in Korea with the things that have happened with StarCraft, with gambling that have been bad. I personally just avoid it like the plague. I've had even companies come up and try to sponsor me and stuff. I'm like, no. You don't understand. I work in StarCraft in Korea. I can't touch this stuff. It's just not. It wouldn't go well.
And I wonder if there's an ecosystem that can help out players more with all that.
Yeah, but I've heard just horror stories from some of the Counter-Strike guys about their messages when they lost games, right? Because Counter-Strike betting got huge, even before it was money, when it was skins. And so it's quite scary. I think one of the nice things that I would consider to work with a gambling sponsor is to really limit people's bets on games. So there isn't even if the max amount is just $5, I'd rather do betting with $5 max amounts than allow people to go crazy, because then no one's going to be bullying the players, of losing $1,000 or whatever they lost,
Yeah. All right. Excellent question there, Shadow Sheep. Thank you for it. Shampoo McTavish asks, why do pro gamers often use earbuds under their headphones in tournaments? Are they listening to music in addition to the in-game music from the headphones or something? So the earbuds are the actual game sound. Occasionally tournaments will allow you to listen to music. Not all of them do. They all have their own rules on that. But the headphones that go over the top are noise canceling and sometimes have white noise as well. So that's what you're looking at. All right. Thanks for the question. Vexian Rowe asks, if you could imbue a player with the very best version of themselves that allowed them to win a global finals, Who would it be, and why would it be a Patrice Zelda? It would be great to see Sal win the world.
Because then when we get a big champion that we all rally behind and we go to watch their stream, it's actually really good quality.
Yeah, that would
That's
be
my
nice.
reason.
Yeah, the better you are, the worse your quality is, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's the parting curse.
Yes. I'm canning and parting for life. All right. Thank you, Vexian, for the question. Sate0 asks, I will figure out the way to make Artosis not ignore my food nonsense. I will expose the truth, but not this week. This question is for both Brood War and StarCraft 2. If upgrades went to +4 instead of +3 with the expected increase in price and stats, what would that change about the metagame, if anything?
Nathanias would be GSL champion because Battle Cruisers wouldn't die.
Well, I mean, with the amount of overkill that already happens in StarCraft, like it would be pretty game breaking with the way that some of the units that get the +5 or +2 or 3 versus specific types of units, like you're talking about, like maybe Baneling's just like straight up one-shotting everything that's light, right? Like, you know, you're like, oh, you don't need to land 2 of them anymore, right? As soon as they hit that first one, and then because the armor upgrades do not scale anywhere near as well as attack upgrades outside of like, you know, small unit interactions like Marines versus Ultralisks. So for the most part, like your power units just become that much more suffocating. Like it's going to be even more impossible to break out of like a siege tank contain. It's going to be even more impossible to break out of like any sort of air contain with big units that have burst damage. It's a it is a cool idea. I like it a lot in co-op. You'd have to I think you'd have to retune how upgrades work a little bit, or make it just extremely prohibitively expensive to go for it.
Because those balanced around +3, right? Like if something's jumping by 5 per thing, if then you suddenly have that extra oomph.
It's like,
but there's a lot of units that go from 2 or 3 shotting a unit to 1 or 2 shotting it, right? And that ends up, you know, that can be, it doesn't seem that as big immediately, but like it's one of those things that gets out of hand very quickly.
I think perfect answer, basically. Thanks for the question, Sate0. Optional player asks, fix your game, Daybreak. Is there a decent brand or kind of wrist compression band one could recommend? I'm thinking of getting some for work and don't know where to find them. A quality one to try out. Maybe if they made an esports store to walk into. Oh, and summon Gretor. Okay, so
hold your hands up, Nathanias.
Oh yeah, I just use it's literally just a Nike double wide wristband. Is what I use for my compression, because sometimes the small one moves around, but this one sits really still.
Why do you use it for compression? What do you need about compression? I'm confused. Because
it has to do with circulation and putting your wrist down on your desk and not cutting off your own circulation. It's like I'm pretty sure it's a carpal tunnel related thing, but yeah.
So wait, is it supposed to be tight?
It doesn't need to be tight. What it needs to do is provide enough support that if you put your hand down on your desk and you're like not really thinking and you're pushing your hand down hard without realizing it, you're not cutting off circulation to your hand, which is something that a lot of people do.
And compressing your hand to do that?
Yeah, well, if you're spreading out where the pressure is going over the entire thing, which is already giving you a little bit of pressure. As well.
Wow.
Yeah, but it constricts you in a way that isn't too limiting, and a lot of compression stuff improves circulation because of that too.
Let me tell you how stupid I am then, because I got wristbands, and the thing is, I really prefer to play with them because it just makes it more comfortable to sit on the desk. Like, because, you know, sometimes my wrists are on the edge of the desk and stuff. And you don't want that edge.
But it's exactly that edge feeling, though. That's terrible for you. That's really bad for you.
Edge feeling.
So, but I make sure I have, like, they're pretty loose, so I have to, like, move them up. And I recently bought a new pair that, like, were feeling like they were compressing
double wide, baby.
I have them around giant cans of beans, trying to stretch them out because I'm like, oh, these are too tight.
They loosen up over time. Put them through the wash.
Wait, Artosis, can you just put your wrist back up again with that thing?
Well, these ones. This is why I bought new ones, because these ones are like falling down. They're like so old and so used now.
You're the ultra skinny nerd meme. That was.
Where's your Nintendo Power Glove, Dan?
Grab both my wrists with one hand. I'm like, oh, let me go down.
I should definitely take all that seriously with stretching of the hands and all that. Anyone putting in the long grind sessions, and they got those compression gloves and whatnot. So I'm glad that was brought up.
Yeah, that was. I'm gonna take them off the bean can when I'm done here and let them compress my wrists a little bit extra. All right, optional player. Thank you for the question, and I learned something. So thanks. Yeah. Tommy Balls asks, your StarCraft has gone crazy. All of a sudden, your units do something that no one else's do, and for some reason, no one notices. What's the smallest change that you would need for your personal army to help you win GSL? Workers X2 speed, Zerglings +3 armor, Vikings +20 health.
Power overwhelming.
My supply depots build as fast as pylons and overlords. That's my buff.
To win GSL. Huh. My pylons can power uphill.
You're sick.
Easy win. Easy win. All right. Thanks for the question, Tommy Balls. Evo asks, so all of the units in the game have voice lines when you click on them. If you could give one unit a self-deprecating line, what unit would it be, and what would you have them say?
Probably something funny you can do with the suicide units, like a Baneling.
Says sorry.
The Bane, a voice line for the Baneling?
Sure. Okay, maybe not the Baneling, but Infested Terran. Infested Terran, I don't know.
Yes, yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one.
The Baneling's like, how about you? Oh, I'm like, what?
And when the medevac drops, give it a voice command. It sometimes says, where it's like it's a good day to die or something. I don't know.
All right.
You're dropping Marines into Banelings.
Thanks for the question, Evo. Hope that does well for you. Eden Sorg asks, Wood League guy in the chat ask, TY's positional play was on point versus Scarlett on Golden Wall. Felt pretty hopeless for Scarlett for most of the game. In hindsight, was it a mistake to open the back end of her base and give TY's Marines an easy access to the high ground? By the way, shout out to Soul. I don't know if you guys watched last night, but basically Scarlett mined out the back on Golden Wall, the back of her main. But I think it was a good idea because otherwise her Ling Bane can't do anything against the tanks on low ground. So it gave her an opportunity to engage, even though it didn't work out. Because TY can lift up in the medevac and then drop out. So it'll take him a little bit longer, but she has no counterplay to the siege tanks otherwise without opening it. So I think it was a good play. Thanks for the question, Eden Sorg. Some Drunk Canadian asks, can we get an update on the guy in the chat merch? I'll set it live next week. And everyone, was there a moment in your career where if things went differently, you would not be here today? I.e., Fear Dragon mentioned Scarlett may have retired if she didn't win IM Pyeongchang. Envoyer D. Lamour D. Vancouver.
Love from Vancouver, right?
Possibly. No one knows.
That's an interesting question. I'd say yes. Probably applies to everyone. I mean, Artosis made the decision to move to Korea with Tasteless back in the day. I had an option one time to move to Korea to work on Pro League, I think. But then Adam Apicella from Major League Gaming said, hey, come to New York City. So I ended up going to New York City. And then for Rocket League, I almost just stumbled into Rocket League because I was living in Burbank working on an esports show, and they were doing the Rocket League show closer to where I was living than what my day job was. So it just was just convenient all the way through. So I think there's probably a lot of weird circumstances that have brought all of us in different directions, you know?
But
I think a lot of them.
Yeah, I mean, these are opportunities that keep you going. But was there ever an instance where you felt like, if this doesn't happen to me, I'm out, right? Because like, if you're an up and coming commentator, I know that some people really struggle with the idea of, I'm going to give it a year, and if I don't make it to X stage or have X opportunities, it's not for me and I'm done. Was there anything like that you guys put a kind of limit
for me, for me, that's constant. That's almost constant. I mean, everyone has different career paths and where they're going. I've found myself working on things as long as I can, and then just looking for the next thing. I try to have my skill set though all across esports so that I can be valuable and helpful to whoever might need it. Because this game is this scene is changing all the time. You don't know the next big game that's going to come out, so you don't know how much value you might be able to have. So it can be stressful. It can be, you might not know what you're doing next year if you're trying to pursue this space. Obviously, there are exceptions to that, but that's my experience.
I'm gonna say there has never been a time. This is gonna sound super ego. I'm so sorry. There has never been a time where I have questioned or like if something has happened and I didn't think I was going to continue when it comes to esports. I feel like I've always been very confident about like a 1, 2, 3 year plan and felt actually even now I feel more stable in esports than ever before, and it's always just grown over year after year after year because I feel like I'm malleable enough to be able to adapt to anything that comes my way now.
Yeah, but there's also got to be situations where you're like, if I can't pay rent doing this, if I can't eat food, let's go to the cockroach of esports, Nate. I mean, you had a rough time at the start.
Dude, man, like, well,
But you
what,
never gave up. I remember you
it
coming
was,
out to Sweden. You were just like, I'll sleep. Like when
no,
you came
I
to
slept.
Sweden.
I slept on that bathroom floor because it was heated. Yeah, no.
Yeah, you slept on our bathroom floor in
Yeah, the
Sweden
bathroom
because
floor
it was
was-
heated, so you
yeah.
could work StarCraft.
Yeah,
Like, so you must have been like, I will
for months
never
at a
give up.
time. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
I mean, everybody has their own stories, right? Like, I grew up with like not really much. I had a single parent family, a couple brothers, food stamps, house burned down, like basically every bad thing that could have happened outside of like impalement or losing a limb or loss of like function of my body basically went down. So I mean, I spent half my life sleeping on broken beds and couches and on the floors of places already. So for me, doing that was like,
Didn't
if
matter.
that's if I have to do that, I would do it again. Honestly, that was a really nice bathroom floor. So I don't have too many complaints about
welcome.
it. Regardless, that place was amazing. That place was still some of the best days. And
Yeah,
then,
but that's the cool thing though about like a lot of people that are still here today and is still within StarCraft is like actually there was nothing that was going to stop them if they were physically possible, right? And so when the comparison came about, if that person didn't win the tournament, they were done. I think, I know Nate for sure is like, no, if I've got a voice and I can get there,
yeah,
I'll get there.
I got told no about 50 times beforehand. Like I've got ancient emails with everybody that's in charge of the scene right now, because at some point
Nate's got a list.
They were just the guys. Well, I just because that's what I had to do though, is I reached out to everybody. I'd be like, hey, does ESL need a caster? I'm just I'm random McFuckface guy. Can I cast your stuff? Or the emails sent to MLG and they're like, well, do you want to observe for free? Can you get down to New York? And I'm like, well, I want to cast. And they're like, well, we already have casters. We don't even know who you are, right? Like I just kind of did everything that I possibly could have, because at that point in my life, I really did not feel like I had too many other options. This is what I wanted more than anything. But that was, at least for me, the beginning, getting my foot in the door that first time was the decisive moment. Past that, I've turned down many opportunities to give up doing what I do. I don't enjoy doing other stuff as much as I've loved working on StarCraft and having like autonomy with like my stream and whatnot.
To that point,
go ahead. Sorry.
I mean, I guess it's different for a player to a commentator or a host, right? Especially if, as I'm framing it, like I'm malleable. Also, part of it is like, as a freelancer as well, I charge a day rate, which is like keeping me safe for any weird instances that go on. So I don't have to then just disappear into the void and say, right, I can't do this anymore because I can't sustain it, right? So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I agree. Yeah, no, you're right though with the point. It is different for players. There must be moments with players which is like, look, if I don't qualify, maybe this isn't for me. If I don't, win this or so I can understand it more with players that they might have a higher demand on kind of performance, and with us, who've been on camera and commentators, it's really about at the beginning, it's are we surviving and what we're willing to do, and I think everyone was like, if they could do it, they were going to do it at the beginning. So that's cool. Good question.
We've all shared beds. Like I shared a bed with Golden Boy at an MLG once.
Whoa.
He kicked me off on the middle of the night.
What to say?
And
I haven't shared a bed with him, I promise.
but I feel like there is, it's a lucrative industry though. The game developers are making money. So you kids who are telling your parents to let you keep playing, there is a lot of resources that can back you up right now that did not exist 10 years ago when we were trying to play games. So I think there is a threshold where you could be wildly successful as a commentator. Sorry, there's like plain background noise. But it's a lot to get there. It's a grind, sleeping on floors, whatever. You gotta But there might be a time where it's a little easier, and because there is money and there's a lot of it out there. Games are making money, so for those aspiring to be a commentator, I think it could be a good aspiration, especially if you love video games.
Well, for me, I think it's like I'm kind of the reverse of Scarlett, where if I was a little bit better as a pro gamer, then I would probably not be a commentator. So I would still be here, but in a different form, right? Because I would prefer to be a pro gamer. It's just too hard for me, apparently. But yeah, great question there. It was some good discussion. Thanks, some drunk Canadian. Metis asks, what do you believe is the biggest missed opportunity with StarCraft 2 by Blizzard? Mine would be them taking so long to implement the war chests and shop feature. Yeah, I mean that's a pretty big missed opportunity, right? If that was around in Wings of Liberty.
Progression. I'm gonna say progression is my answer. The fact that the levels were capped at like 30 for 4 or 5 years, and then they like raised them again for like no real reason. But if they had never put a cap on it, and they had like set some really lofty goal type stuff, I think that would have kept people who, like, a lot of people are goal driven. Having stuff to look forward to, I think, is a big deal. I know I personally do not have as much interest in playing because there's literally nothing left to get other than, have your 50% win rate that the game forces you into, where you think you're getting better, but you feel like you're not. So it would have been nice if they had like actually tried to use that progression system in a meaningful way that actually did something.
Okay. For me, it's esports tab and accessibility to cross pollination. I've already spoken about it today.
Okay. Thank you for the question, Metis. We definitely did speak to that kind of earlier. Sergeant Belano asks, for Artosis, or if someone has spent a good chunk of time in South Korea, what foods would you miss from South Korea if you had to move to another country? What foods do you wish you could find in South Korea? So foods I would miss, I mean, just I guess in general, reasonably priced Korean food. There's nothing stupider to me than when I go to New York or LA and everyone's like, we're at an esports event, let's go eat Korean. And I look at it, it's like 9 times more expensive than and I'm like, oh my God, guys, like really, you're gonna buy a $1 bottle of soju for $13 right now? Are you actually gonna do that? That's oof. What foods?
On that note, real quick, I'm very close to like a Koreatown. I live in Seattle area, so there's a Korean grocery right near me. So, and affordable, all-you-can-eat barbecue places, all Korean barbecue places. So I'm lucky in all that. I've never been to Korea though. I would love to visit one day.
It's an excellent place. As for foods I wish I could find in South Korea, I've been here so long, I can't even think of what I can't find.
Dude, if one of those chicken hoffs were here, I would lose my shit. Damn. It was one of the most fun nights when we went to the chicken hoff in Pyeongchang, dude.
That was super fun.
Oh man, I'd give a lot to have one of those nearby.
You know what we're missing? Chipotle and like what's that other thing that started to Panera bread? That type of stuff. We don't have anything that's like either of those. So like good sandwiches or something. We don't really have. We have like Quiznos and Subway, and those are shit compared to a good place. So all right. Thanks for the question, Sergeant Belano. Lord Philium asks, if Artosis was making his team for the Warty StarCraft War Chest League of Extraordinary Leaguers, what would be your team? I probably would have drafted exactly what Pig drafted. I think he won. I think he won the draft. What was it, like Cyril Dream? Can't even remember now. It was like a ridiculous lineup. I'd either do that or like underrated Korean players that don't have an opportunity to really shine. So I think the Korean lower tier scene needs more opportunities and they just don't have it. So that would be my 2 ideas there. Thanks, Lord Philium. The question. Legan asks, how important for an esport is to have weekend land like events where new players can just show up and play? Does Korea have these currently or only big leagues? Is there currently too heavy focus on having massive tournaments and leagues for an esport to be viewed as successful and live? There's not many smaller things for StarCraft out here. In fact, for StarCraft 2, there's only GSL qualifiers. For StarCraft 1, there's a little bit more because it's a more popular game, but it's not super regular like you might find fighting game tournaments in America or something like
I,
that.
I feel like that's the next frontier almost, really. Like we've seen esports explode and be so successful at the highest level. What's next is building out all the infrastructure for newer players, for younger players, for school systems, and also something in Korea that they have that they need in the United States they don't have is PC cafes, and it's inevitable. It's going to happen. It's just when. It has to be done right. So I think that's a really cool question.
No, it's really true. We've lost that. We've lost the turn up to a LAN. We've lost the smaller community. And actually, Blizzard, as you mentioned, one of the things that they did, which was quite forward thinking, was they involved the universities, or sorry, colleges of America. So they created stepping stones, and even if those players aren't ever going to go pro, at least they've got an experience, and they've got this kind of great memory with going to that LAN and playing that game. So when there is an esports, it could be a thing that happens. This is something that we think about with trying to how we work with the community. And actually, originally I had about $200,000 all set up for esports, and I actually cut it in half. And I said, we'll do $100,000 for the esport pros, and then we're going to do a grassroots fund. So we're announcing a grassroots fund where if you're organizing a LAN tournament or you're organizing an online tournament, you can fill in a form and apply for money. And there's actually some LANs that go on around Europe within FPS, Arena FPS, that are going to be applying, just for like $2,500 prize money or $5,000 prize money, which we think is great because they're going to have a great time and they have that connection to the game. So we've lost that grassroots walk into LAN, kind of, organize a LAN and play with friends. So it would be great if it comes back, in many ways. We do focus a little bit too much on the absolutely professional side because that's where you can you can sell that, right? You can get sponsors, so it makes money. That's why people are there. But interesting.
And there are games that reward you for being on location at a place. Like the game detects you there and rewards you further. So it's like there's a lot of really cool systems that can be there.
And this isn't new as well. ESL were the first company that did this. When I first joined ESL, I think it was in 2008, and I'd been to a previous couple of events. When you went in, you could kind of you could sign your badge in, and it would connect to your ESL account to give you like you were there, right? And it's such a minimal step to put that in the database with a game and connect it to a cosmetic or something, and just something to say like I was here, I went to the and they do it in Dota, at the international. If you go there, you can use your badge, I think, to get stuff. So it would be nice if there's more grassroots connections with game developers. But it's the bandwidth that these game developers have, and can they do it? But yeah, good question.
This may be something too. Like, do you guys know like Friday Night Magic?
Yeah, I saw someone in the chat talking about that.
Yeah, well, I remember going to Friday Night Magic and stuff like that when I lived in the States, where it's like there's a weekly, on Saturday mornings, there was like a weekly thing at my local card shop where just everyone in the area that liked Magic went down and we all played a little tournament, and, it was cheap and it was fun and it was like the highlight of my week. I would give fucking anything to have a weekly LAN tournament where it's just like a very small thing, it's like $100 is on the line, but whatever, everyone shows up and goes and plays. That would be the highlight of my life. I would be so fucking happy practicing for that each week and having a good time. In fact, I'm going to fucking talk to some people.
I don't see how that.
And the thing is, it's your stepping stone as well. And you know what? As a game developer, when TimCon LAN, who is this LAN they organize in Netherlands, they send us pictures of their LAN, right? And so if you're a game developer with a community management team, what better content is there other than the community organizing their own little LANs and giving you pictures of, people having a good time, and, and you're helping them because someone might not know about that, in the Netherlands or, your Friday MTG, etc. And, they might be like, oh, I'm in the area, I'm going to go down. So I think there's power with the developers even building and helping build these grassroots initiatives. And then maybe supporting them, with $100, for a tournament, etc.
I'm personally like working on that. Like I'm in Seattle area, I'm Pacific Northwest, beautiful country. So I'm like trying to work with people in my local area, and that's the thing. Like no matter what major city you're in, there's probably people not too far from you who want to play or who would be willing to get together and hang out. So I really think that's going to be a big part of the future in esports is a lot of these community initiatives coming together from grade school, elementary school, high school to just age group competition at local community places. You know, I'd see it being pretty cool. There's a lot of cool potential there.
Yeah, and I think the community should understand their power, what they're doing, because they're really activating people's interests around these games. So one of the easiest things about this, I would say, if you're doing anything, is the easiest people normally to get hold of a dead team are the community managers. So, you know, so if you're doing anything, just tell them you're doing something, and if they want to, you know, support you, and you know, you might get some merch, maybe you'll get some exposure, but that's, you know, that's where you need to start, and there could be a lot of growth from that in the future.
Damn, great question, great stuff. It's kind of got me like all pumped up, but then I remember coronavirus is here right now. I'm like, all right, well,
I know you're planning right now.
It's like, I'm like, how could I this happen? Maybe a monthly thing at the Africa PC Bong. Oh no, sorry, coronavirus. Okay, we'll try it.
Not right now.
Not right now.
Yeah.
Hey guys, life is on hold. Okay. Thanks for the question. That was a really good one. Really interesting. All right. Saft Scissors asks at Nathanias, how would you rate your Team League draft today? What words of encouragement, read shit talking, would you give your fellow team captains?
Well, I think my draft was awesome. I think I accomplished several of my goals with the types of players that I picked and their backgrounds, especially the things that make them unique. You know, part of my strategy is actually being underestimated, specifically because of my wild card pick. So I'm not going to try and convince you that it's a good pick, because that goes against my own plans. But I'm pretty confident in the league. I'm pretty confident. I think that the two anchor players on our team, if those two can't do it on their own, there's very little expectation for Supernova and Hero Marine to carry the teams on their backs. And I think in that is where the fire will forge, hopefully, some strong metal. And as someone who does a lot of fantasy sports and likes to follow fun, weird meme draft type stuff, going for all of the best picks that you have available. Go play fantasy sport league. Good luck with that. Pick the best guy available every time it's your turn to pick, and you're never gonna win. It actually does not happen. You have to be smart and think about where certain players are gonna fit into schemes and how things outside the game are changing and moving around them. But I feel really confident. I'm really happy. I'm really excited with my team. SOS already told me we're going to win, so that's all the confidence I needed.
Damn. Perfect. For the rest of us, I don't know if you guys actually looked at those teams. They just came out a few hours ago.
I know them.
I'm looking at it now.
Okay. They want to know who we think is going to win. I mean, here's the thing. It's best of one. It's not just, if you look at the teams on paper, if everything is like best of threes, best of fives, I think Pig did the best draft, right? But that doesn't mean that his team is just going to go ahead and win. I think that there's like potential all over the place. Like even Fear Dragon's insane team.
Yeah.
I look at that, like, well, that's those players. I'm like, well, best of one. I mean,
I have a different choice.
There can be something put together from that. Absolutely. You have 4 interesting cannon rushes go down. Yeah. You know?
I'm sad he didn't follow through with the full meme and actually go for a house as well. But anyway, my choice is the Muslims team. Actually, I think the Muslims team is pretty good. TYZ, Stormragu, Hurricane. Of those names, I guess people will be like, "Oh, Hurricane's the weakest choice," but he's by no means weak when it comes to over. I think that's a really good team.
Yeah. All right.
As someone not in tune as much as I could be, I was looking at the teams y'all mentioned, but also I'm always looking at Innovation, who is on Zombie Grub's team. So those are my thoughts.
And to be honest, like, I mean, Showtime's solid, and then Euthermal and Laser. These guys can win ones.
Yeah, it's a solid team.
It's going to be an interesting.
Wait. Now that I think about it, how did the Muslim get this team? Like, this is pretty sick.
Everybody rates different players differently.
Yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, people weren't aware of how good.
Nathanias has like some sort of crazy bunker strategy. He's getting ready for his team or something.
I love strategizing. Why do you think I play StarCraft?
If for strategy, you don't just play for mechanics. Oh,
people, you know, I'm boring because I like to play long games because that's where I get to have an actual plan unfold and take course over the the extent of a full actual game.
Look out for the battle cruisers.
All right. Sap Scissors, thank you for the question there. And best of luck to everyone in that. Last question here from our very own Alessander. There are some fun games on the StarCraft arcade with no tournaments other than Rifkin, Casting Subscriber, King of the Hill. Why not throw an invitational and see how far it goes every few months? I love the Twitch rivals with the casters. The players have fun bantering and it's different but still exciting.
I'll take this one. This one's a pretty easy one. This is very sad, but the Twitch rival stuff was actually really good. Everything that I heard about internally is that it was a massive success. Actually, I think that it's mostly. I think obviously, this is kind of what happens when we're not the important kid in the family, right? Like the big brother got everything moved over to YouTube, so tragically we lose out on one of the very few things that I actually got to hear a lot of positive feedback on from all sides. Because I was consulted a few times with actually building the formats for those events. That stuff is really cool. I don't see a reason why, if it couldn't be backed by somebody with any level of like credibility to put it on, like if it was Blizzard endorsed by a future war chest or something, you could run these types of events online. If all you have to do is incentivize enough for people to get up at 3 a.m, and then you could have a hoot and holler in time.
Was it Machine that was organizing a lot of that, or am I wrong?
Yeah. Machine Frodan was actually in on it quite a bit too.
Nice.
Well, it's a good idea. Well, you're right. a different set of IPs was looked at and sold. Although StarCraft,
you need a sponsor and you need developer support. So someone talk to Elon Musk and let's make it happen.
Yeah.
How much is that the case with Twitch rivals though? Because I know they already have kind of what you consider, long-term sponsorships, right? I think it's like Doritos and Mountain Dew and stuff. They
don't run
need
them
content.
they don't run them for all of their shows though. They don't run the same sponsors for all of them. So it's not like they couldn't. It's not like they couldn't build stuff in with StarCraft. And one of the very few things I've ever gotten to see any types of numbers on, like it wasn't, it was not a bad thing. It was not a bad investment for them to set up the Twitch rivals events that they did for StarCraft on either side, from what I heard. So like, that's just like a real sad casualty.
Yeah, I did watch the Twitch rivals yesterday for a small game called Rocket Arena, which was being picked up by EA, like a 3v3 kind of little third-person FPS. Before Twitch Rivals started, it had a concurrent player base on Steam of about 450. Twitch Rivals was getting it to a point where it was like, I think on Twitch, maybe close to 100k viewers across all the streamers. And then the peak of the game went from 450 to about 980. So I it's like Twitch Rivals gives you the exposure, but if your game isn't sought after, it might not be worth it that much. So even with StarCraft going back on Twitch Rivals with arcade modes, it might not incentivize that many people because it's, they might consider, I know StarCraft, I played StarCraft. Unless, of course, there's a really unique experience within the arcade mode, then that might pull people back in, especially, which I think there could be. So I think it depends on the arcade mode if it's worth doing something like with Twitch Rivals, etc.
Yeah,
because I know Twitch would maybe be more.
Now, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Blizzard's not doing anything with Twitch anymore. All our war chest stuff is going to be on YouTube now too. So
yes, of course, yes. There was original Twitch deal. For all the IPs. Looking around the 100 mil mark, and then YouTube came in and scooped it on the renewal.
Yeah, but we're getting good views at GSL at least. So
yeah,
nice. All right, that does it for the Patreon questions. Thank you so much, guys. Once again, guys, thank you to all the supporters for that. It's been great. Check out patreon.com/The Pylon Show. All right, we're gonna go ahead and close out. Why don't you guys give some plugs for where you want people to check out your stuff and everything? Too Good. Let's start with you, man. Thank you so much for coming on. You really added some interesting points of view and topics for this conversation. I think it was.
I just want to say thanks for having me, and hi to everybody again, Kaelaris, Nathanias, and nice to meet you, Axeltoss. So, and also just enjoy watching, the RTS here and there, and rooting for you guys to, either get a new IP or get updates. But you certainly one of the legit esports. So I really hope, I think long term it's always going to come back around. So I think you're next in line for something good. And just want to say, hi to everybody in chat. And it's nice to say hi to the StarCraft 2 community. But you don't need to follow me. I'm an Instagram model, apparently. I just saw it on screen. The only reason I put that there was because I wanted to annoy people so that they would look for me on Instagram and realize it was just a picture of Bruno, who is my friend that now works at that. I don't know what to do with Twitter, but
all right. Well, people can check out your game. Diabolical is amazing. It really feels like Quake 3, and that's a game that's you should love. If you like StarCraft, you should like that too.
I just want to say, Too Good, you're like living my next step dream by doing this game designing stuff. So kudos to you, man. It's fucking sick.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I have to admit, I came in with a lot more confidence, but it's I'm learning. So I'm really hoping in the future I can give opportunities to more people in esports to kind of join us if there's not opportunities at some of the other companies they want to work out. So down the road, if we get to do more games and different kind of games, there's a lot of expertise, and it'd be nice to catch up with everybody.
Great. Thanks again for coming on. Kaelaris, how about you? What do you want to plug here? Where do you want people to check you out and find more of you?
I feel bad plugging any other game that's not StarCraft because I'm doing a lot of other games, currently. I did get asked to do a lot of the StarCraft 2 stuff for the DreamHack things that are going on right now, but they asked me 2 weeks before, and I was booked. I'm like booked through all the way through November or something, so it's a bit difficult to actually do that. But yeah, thanks very much for having me on. It was really fun. I don't even really feel that fatigued, even though it's 5:42 a.m.
Sorry,
Time for cop.
It's all good. It's all good. I guess I've got shows coming up. You can probably find them on my Twitter. Go follow my Instagram, I guess. And that's probably about it. Thanks for having me on. And hopefully I get to come on at some point in the future.
Absolutely. You all have been fantastic. I want you all back. Axeltoss, where can people follow you, see more of you, all that?
Yeah, first off, thanks for having me. This is awesome. I've done StarCraft for a long time, but I haven't recently. So it's really cool to still be able to talk to some of you guys and to interact with the community, you guys in the chat. So I just really appreciate the opportunity to come and hang out. Maybe I'll do more StarCraft stuff again one day. We'll see. I work on many games, so I'm always open to new things. You can follow me on Twitter at Axeltoss, and just kind of, I guess, look out for me in different places. I'm doing Apex Legends tomorrow. There's a game called Kart Rider I really like. I already told Artosis about that. Otherwise, shout out to Too Good also for hanging out and giving us his insight. And it's so hard to make a game. I don't know if y'all saw Crucible or what's happening with that, but Amazon released it and now it's not as released as it was. So it's quite the endeavor, but I've seen a lot of positive things about Diabolical. So that was really cool. But anyway, shout out to everyone else here. And again, thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming. Nathanias, how about you? Where can people see more?
I'm just doing my stream grind. I've been doing some of the commentary for the DreamHack Master Summer, which has been fun. I'll be doing one of the days of the finals, I think on the 19th. But otherwise, I'm just streaming. I'm just on that grind. Things have been pretty rough over in the U.S., and it doesn't seem like it's going to get super better anytime soon. So I just want to say a big thanks to everybody that's been showing support for those of us out here trying. And StarCraft is keeping me sane. It's one of the things that's helping me with that. So I just want to thank everybody for those who are accepting. And I hope you guys tune in for the War Chest Team League. Come watch the Tank Toppers kick some ass. I'm really hoping to have some fun matches and come up with some fun strategies with my team for you guys.
Great. Thanks. And as for me, guys, just follow my Twitch channel and my YouTube and stuff like that. I'm on all the time, casting stuff and streaming and all that. So a big thanks to everyone again for coming on. It was a great show, really interesting conversations. And of course, a big thanks to the Pylon Show team. I do not make the show alone. In fact, I'm the smallest part of this show. The team really is responsible for making this all work out. So big cheers to everyone who's involved. And that's about that. We're going to go to a quick little commercial break. And when we come back, I will be doing This Week in StarCraft. But thank you again, everyone, for coming on. And hope to have you back sometime. Oh, little Floof is joining us. We'll see you guys next week. Cheers. Hey, everybody. Well, this is time for This Week in StarCraft. Thank you for sticking around for it. We sometimes move it to the back of the show if we have anyone from Europe on because, well, it's just such a terrible time zone for them, and I want to make the show as quick as possible, even though it still takes a long time. But let's go ahead and go through This Week in StarCraft. This is all the StarCraft news for the past week. And, of course, you can find this anywhere that you're listening to or watching the show. There's always a link to it. It's always around, so check it out. Let's go ahead and jump down to page 3 to start. A little bit of Schnail news. The Schnail plushie is for sale, so you can check that out on their Shopify. Of course, Schnail is the StarCraft StarCraft human and AI thing. So you can basically play against really strong StarCraft 1 bots. I've played against them. I have a video on YouTube about it. They're actually really, really strong. They'll probably beat you down. But anyways, my man Sonko has put up some plushies. If you're interested in a larva plushie there, check it out. makingcomputerdothings.com or their Shopify store. We also have upcoming events that we'll be mentioning here. DreamHack Masters, ESL Cups, GSL, AlphaX Junior Championships, and more. Going forward, the DreamHack Masters Summer 2020. Of course, this has the winners from all the different regions. You can see here Group A, Serral Innovation Neeb Risky. Group B, TY Parting Hero Marine Time. Group C, Rainer Maru Estrella Special. And Group D, Cure Trap Clem Haas. Those are some sick groups. These are going to be taking place on the 16th through 19th, so coming right up. Definitely check them out. We also have some reviews of how those players got there. DreamHack Masters Summer 2020. We kind of went over this in the last episode, but so the finalized bracket where again Rainer versus Serral in the finals, with Clem getting a 3rd place and Hero Marine just below that. So kind of what you would expect from the region. Also, the NA Neeb taking out Estrella in the finals 4-1. Estrella with some really impressive games in there. Though taking out both Scarlett and Future on his way to that finals. And of course, we have GSL Season 2. We've actually gone through some additional groups. And of course, we're in the round of 16 now, where we just had DRG and TY advance last night. As you can see here, Group A in the middle. And yeah, Special and Scarlett are out. Anyways, we'll be back on Saturday with the next group. But we have the Alpha X Junior Championship Season 8. And that's going to begin on July 19th. So you can see some of the players in it. Eric Fire, 13 years old. Exostriker, 15. Slycrab, 15. Magnath, 15. Wannabe Beyond, 13. 15 for Baby Marine. Not sure Endless TV's age. Ghostie's 14. But yeah, kind of crazy. Such young players, really strong players. Check it out. It's a very interesting tournament. You can see all the up and coming talent as they grow. All right, This Week in StarCraft. We have a list of the ESL Open Cups and some of the points. You can see that they have won the point standings as well. You can see it is definitely making a difference for some of the players up on top. And hey, you don't have to be a pro to play these. You can just play them and have some fun playing against some of your favorite pros. ESL Cup Korea. We had Stats take down Solar in the last one, 3-1, with Zest and SOS hitting that top 4 as well. We also have ESL Cup EU, where Hero Marine wins yet another one. This guy has won the most cups by far over Gerald here in the finals, with Sol and Clem hitting that top 4. We also have the NA Cup, where Parting took down Solar 3-2. Cham and Solier hitting the top 4. Wow, Solier with a nice run, even being nice in the round of 8. Very cool. Solier, of course, is an up-and-coming Spanish player. It's been around for a bit. Anyways, moving on. ESL Open Cups AU. We had Demi over Pez 3-1 in the finals. Azure and Miomeka hitting that top 4. In the Lima League, we have Stats over Creator 3-0. Wow, and all Protoss top 4. Chance and Hurricane making that top 4 as well. Oh my god, it's almost the whole tournament was Protoss. Looking at it, that's crazy. Anyways, congrats to all of my Protoss brethren. You all got eliminated from GSL, so you could play Lima League. All right. It is Cheesadelphia, my dudes. Parting 4-1 over Solar. Looks like Nina and Braddock making the top 4 as well. You can check that out over on the Cheesadelphia stream. Yeah, that would make sense. All right, OSC King of the Hill Weekly. Cham emerged as the king at number 31, despite losing to Uthermal early on. Max Pax and Marsman both had good runs as well. This is over on Creighton's channel. Check it out. The Sea Duckling Open, one of many of the tournaments over on the Cranky Duckling stream. Definitely something you should be following. ES Reaver wins this one over Wynaris in the finals with Bally and Xenomorph making that top 4. So have the 2020 NA Apprentice Cup, another Cranky Ducklings thing. And we had Silky win it over Vindicta in the finals, 3-0, Patty Mac and Dolan hitting top 4. We have the Crate Drop Invitational. And it looks like Cure took it down 3-0 over Seoul in the finals. And they played each other's countrymen in the round of 4 with Mana and Zest being in that top 4 as well. We have Ladder Heroes. We did mention this some last week as well with Fear Dragon. You can check this out on Fear Dragon's website. But Peely Peely taking down NA this time and Seoul taking down EU. We also have the Audai Weekly. Justice Simon takes down another one 3-2 over Ranger from Malaysia in the finals. We had Upley and Nux in 3rd and 4th place, respectively. The Legacy Weekly Japan. We had Cyark win once again over Vice Robin this week. Congrats to him. If you are in Japan or speak Japanese, this is a great tournament for you to take part in, so check it out. We have Copa Hyperion. Jim Rising defeated the Zerglord 3-0 in the finals with Cham and Yanshi in the top 4. Battle of the Americas. Cham defeated Nina in the finals 3-0 with Maples and Eggs hitting that top 4. Cham and Nina, of course, always getting to the end of these tournaments. A little bit of a rivalry might be stewing there. We also have the Exxon Cup. Chance ended up winning. Of course, this guy is an amateur in Korea looking to break into the pro scene over Nina in the finals 3-2. Well played. With Sai and Ryan SC2 hitting that top 4. We have the EDF StarCraft 2 Tournament 2020. And it looks like Magnoth, Fireclaw, The Tiny, and Firebird are leading their groups right now. We also have the Shirshadi Open. Number 24, Parting defeated Armani 3-2 in that finals with Max Pax and Exo Striker hitting the top 4. That over on Shirshadi's channel. All right, we have Diamond and Platinum Heroes Season 2, and those are some big brackets right there. In Diamond, it looks like we had Garrett, Toon Dragon, Samwise, and Narok in that order. And in the Platinum, Affections, Acute Snack, Cheesy Dwarf, and Niven rounding it out. That's a great idea, Cute Snack. All right. If you are Diamond or Platinum, this is a great community for you to join. Definitely very active. I'm sure they're all improving. All right, SCV Rush Open, number 218. Christianer, 3-0 over Poppy SC2. In the finals, we had SC2 Soon and Shino in the top 4. We also have the CSO Weekly, number 9. And that is pronounced Yay is Rossi. I am Russian. Defeated Dark Angel 2-1. Thank you, Alessandro, for putting there. I was just staring that ID. I'm like, I have no idea what this says. Congrats, though, to I Am Russian. Doyu Cup 2020. We have Rainer, Stats, Innovation, Suyu Thermal, and Solar advancing. Right. And this is, of course, put together by SC Boy. A lot of prize money on the line, so check it out. Wardy's casting that in English. And we have Winner Winner, I'll Buy You Effing Dinner by, of course, our wonderful community member, Some Drunk Canadian. And it looks like Ukko beat Snoxtar 4-1 in the finals. Shell and 11's 121, rounding out that top 4. The Pig Show this week. He went ahead and interviewed Future, the top NA Terran right now. And he's a very interesting guy, so definitely check it out. I heard that this episode was very good, but I haven't watched it myself. Check it out over on Pig's YouTube. All right, the El Prisma podcast. It's a new Spanish-speaking Latin American podcast with 3 of the best Protoss in Latin America. Dastan, Darkness, and Paco Mike. All right, 3 Protoss players doing a podcast together. Sounds familiar. Check it out. We also have the War Chest Team League. Talked about that just briefly during the Patreon questions today. But you can see that it is ramping up as of July 24th. The draft was done last night. You can see all the teams listed there below. A lot of teams, I won't go ahead and read them all out right now, but some very exciting takes on how to draft teams. And it'll be interesting to see who comes out on top there. I'm sure a lot of bragging will be done. All right, the NA Team League Rumble 3. Looks like Rumble 3 begins on July 28th. And it's just kind of a friendly clan war event featuring 6 up-and-coming NA teams. You can check that out over on Creighton's stream. We have the CSO Challenger number 1. And this is a tournament open to players 3,300 MMR to GM. That's going to be starting in just a couple days. So go check it out if you want to play. We also have ProBots 2020 Season 2 from ES Champ. Been one heck of a year, but it's not over yet. There's still some ProBots to be had. All right. So July 23rd, this is going to be starting. You check it out on eschamp.com. All the best StarCraft 2 bots, community bots, will be facing off. All right. SC2 Revealed from David Chan. SC2 Revealed is a replacement for SC2 Unmasked. Of course, Unmasked, unfortunately, is no longer there. This is somewhere you can it's like for using to check out what people's barcodes are to kind of follow players on the ladder a little bit better. Anyways, you can check that out. It's at sc2revealed.com. And he says, I can use community support to help identify the ladder barcodes out there. So if you're interested in seeing how players are actually doing and who is on what ID, this is the place for you. All right, hands-free StarCraft 2. Diamond Zerg vs. Terran. Parrot Pie. In this video series, I'm going to explore if I can play StarCraft using an eye tracker and audio recognition. So this is something we've talked to Fear Dragon a little bit about the show on the show before. Kind of an interesting challenge. And yeah, go check that out and see if he can do it. All right, StarCraft book titles for 2020. Didn't expect to see this in here. StarCraft number 2, Shadow of the Xel'Naga. And StarCraft The Dark Templar Saga. Book 2 of 3, Shadowhunters. All right, several book titles coming up. We also have a few others. Yeah, I guess just more books in the series. And StarCraft War Chest Shadow War is the complete comic collection as well. All right, this week in Brood War. The Brood War G's Weekly. Scan wins it again over DeWalt. This is becoming just so often. It almost looks like it's the same tournament. Parfume and Desakwe. I don't know who that is. Oh, that's interesting. Hitting that top 4 as well. You can check that out. Actually, what website is that on? URL. Yeah, Esports Fun is the one. Russ Brain, of course, the creator of Corrupted Cup and Russian Cyber Games, put that together. Congrats to Scan for yet another victory. The Ultimate Battle. All right, number 50. Larva Zero defeats Best Snow. This is kind of a little team battle thing that's been going on where the players, 2 players from the same race team up against 2 players from the same race. It's kind of similar to the KCM show match series, a little bit different, but it's definitely very interesting and cool. So check it out. And the VODs should be on YouTube as well. Like check out the Afrika YouTube, but definitely on Afrika TV as well if you can navigate that. All right, Academia 4. Week 1, Team Yop defeated Team Ultra 7-2. Team Happy defeated Team Curiosity 4-2, or 8-4 rather, and Team Ugox defeated Team Curiosity 6-3. All right, it's a special league so that novice players can learn and improve directly from the best StarCraft players. Very cool. also have the Afrika TV StarCraft Team League Season 1. This is going on. I believe that Eon Zerg and Nyokin are casting a lot of it in English. I think Eon Zerg has an Afrika channel that he's using, so you probably want to check it out there, but you can also check it out on the Korean channel. And I think some of them are getting up to YouTube, but some of them are getting copyright claimed, so sometimes you won't be able to find them there as easily. But very cool. All the top pro players are playing in it, so definitely check that out. All right, TDR Titanos Del Ring North American Star League 3. We're into the top 4, Gypsy versus Dragon and TT1 against Crossy. Really, really strong lineup. This is basically some of the very best NA talent, some of the very best non-Korean players. I tell you, I really respect all 4 of those players there. So this is worth your time to check out. These are very, very strong players. We also have Man vs. Machine Showdown. All the games are replays from the StarCraft Human and AI League between man and machine on Falcon Paladin's YouTube channel. Check it out. And that is it. That's it for this week in StarCraft. Yeah, hope that you enjoyed. Again, check it out anywhere that you are listening to the podcast or watching the video or whatever it is. Thanks everyone for tuning in this week and staying with us through it. Yeah, thanks for all the support, and we'll be back next week with episode number 100. Oh my God, 100 episodes. See you then.
Shout out to the Pylon Show, the greatest show on the internet.